Welcome to Politically Denton's live coverage of election night on DentonRadio.com, powered in part by Classic of Denton.
We are starting our very first live web podcast.
What is this? What do you call this?
I don't know. I'm not quite sure what this is, but it's
we'll figure that out.
We'll figure it out as the night goes on and the drinks keep flowing. I bet we'll have some incredible ideas. Thanks for coming out, and special thanks to DentonRadio.com for hosting us and helping out with the live broadcast. I'm joined here, of course, with Kevin Roden and Amber Briggle.
Hey.
Amber, welcome.
Yeah, welcome, Amber.
Thanks
This
for
is your
having me.
first time on Politically Denton.
It is. I would have been here sooner, but I couldn't find parking. So we're
Parking
starting a
in
little
that
late.
pad. Come on, get real.
Sore issue.
Well, Amber, of course, ran in 2015. We thought she would give some valuable insight and to what we're going to be talking about tonight. And Kevin, how cool is this that we get to sit here? We've actually been watching returns together since 2011.
Yeah.
And it's typically been me and you sitting around the computer hitting reload.
Or with other folks, like around a bar table. And Amber, you've been there too on election night. And what we find is fun in this is we get to invite whoever wants to come.
Yeah.
Join us in this conversation, because what I like about local politics is you can sit around with friends and you can chat about these things. And we believe there's a lot more people in Denton that like to hear these sorts of things, but don't have a lot of different ways to engage. Isn't that your experience, Amber?
Yeah, well, it's a mixed bag. I'll be honest. I was talking with my husband, Adam, about this yesterday, about how as much as local politics can really affect your day-to-day life, I think because it's something that we live every day, it can get really heated at times.
Yeah.
And and I think that's really the unfortunate thing sometimes with especially with local politics, is that, we can, I feel like sometimes we just don't give each other the benefit of the doubt. And then that if people start asking questions or want to look into the nuance of something, that sometimes if you don't necessarily toe the party line, that your friends, the people who are supposed to get your back, are the ones who so quickly, kind of, I don't want to say reject you, but maybe just don't put that trust in you anymore. And that for me, I think that really stings. Like I get a lot of grief from people, across the state and across the country, but I've never met them, right? But when you get it from your local neighbors and friends, that can really hurt. So I'm really glad that we're having this conversation, because I really think, as Olivia said in a previous podcast, y'all had her from Dress from the Protest, when we sit down and we have these face-to-face conversations, there's a lot more common ground that we can find. So I'm really glad that we're having this.
Yeah,
And we got people
that's
behind us. Where are we? We're right down in downtown Denton, Texas.
Yeah.
And there's people already with signs saying, "We love Al," whatever that weathering guy's name is.
That's awesome.
No, it's interesting. I always tell people what's great about local politics is it's the type of politics where you get to engage in the grocery store, at the pickup line at school or whatever.
Right.
That's the good side of it. The bad side of it is sometimes you got to engage with those same people at the pickup line or at the grocery store when tensions are high. But there's still a beautiful aspect.
Yeah,
to it.
and I'm really, I'm just so pleased to be here, because I think the lineup that y'all have, and you should probably talk about that, is an all-star cast of local leaders and movers and shakers.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, let's wait till they perform till we say that was a good idea.
Do you want to give people who are listening, this is your first ever, do you want to tell people what's the format for tonight? I also really want to hear y'all's predictions too before the results roll in.
Yeah, well, I think we'll get to that. I don't know if we're going to do predictions per se, but I think kind of thoughts on how the campaign went for sure. I want to talk about, but do you want to kind of talk about the layout of what we're going to?
Sure. So
how it's going to go?
For everyone who's tuning in, we've got at 7:00 is when the county will release early voting numbers. So these are everyone who voted the last 2 weeks, ending on, when was it? Tuesday, I think. Yeah. Was the last day of early voting. Those are all ready to go. And so at 7:00, they'll release those in time with when the polls close today, which is 7:00.
Right.
So pending some sort of poll strangeness, they'll release that at 7:00. Then we'll have something to talk about. We'll be able to see a lot of stats relating to early voting. We'll be able to start talking about it, look at numbers, look at some analysis. But then it's going to be a good hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, depending on when the final votes get pulled in from I think there's 8 different sites that are voting sites this week or today that they'll be pulled in. So whether or not we have close races will determine whether or not we've got some nail biters or whether or not we're pretty clear after early voting that we know who's going to win. So that's what we'll be looking for. So you guys who are just tuning in about 10 minutes, we're going to see some great results.
And we're having a data analysis team come in and do
Patrick,
some nerd things.
That's right. Patrick and Jesse have been feverishly working on maps to throw up on our TV right here, and just going to take apart like what precincts are voting, what precincts still have votes coming in. That's how we're going to tell how safe somebody is and their margin after we get the early voting. That's when they kind of come in. So, yeah, that's basically it. So let's kind of talk about the campaign and kind of some of the issues that we saw. Kevin, do you have like a top 3 issues for this year that you saw kind of bubble up to the surface to the average voter?
You know, I will say the biggest thing I'm interested in watching is the last couple of years, there's been a lot of anger in the electorate at the local level for a variety of issues, whether it's something like Buc-ee's or the gas plants or the renewable Denton plan, whatever it's been. We've seen this kind of, I've always said we saw the effect of Trump come to Denton a year and a half before then, so you started seeing this anti-establishment fervor. I don't feel like that fervor is still there in Denton. But it'll be interesting because we have some of the same players who ran during that fervor who are back again this year. Mm-hmm. So to me, whether or not that anger translates into this election and translates into votes, or where those people have channeled, that's a topic of interest to me. Mm-hmm. But I don't get the sense that people are as angry this year. Do you guys?
No. And I think like that anger to me translates into energy getting to the polls. And I think that energy is, to me, palatably lower than it's been in a couple of years, I think. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, well, just the preliminary stuff that, was it Jesse or Patrick put out there to show kind of voting trends, you know, when it was like last year's, it was just specific to districts, and then the time before that, where it was a citywide, you know, at-large race, the numbers are a bit down. And just reading in the DRC the other day that voter turnout is only like 4%. So I think in other years, I mean, not that we ever really see a huge turnout at the local level, which is unfortunate, but it seems like it does seem like voter turnout is down this year, and I'm kind of curious as to why that is.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of reasons for that. I think last time we actually there's actually one of our analysts right there
driving
by looking for parking as we speak.
See? I told you.
Yeah, parking. Who would have thought on a Saturday on a Cinco de Mayo downtown?
Gorgeous.
Patrick, are you listening to us right now? I mean, are you listening? It's unclear.
Blink once for yes.
It's unclear. So I think one of the reasons you saw lower turnout this time as opposed to last election is last election we had the senior tax freeze, which energized a lot of voters out of a certain precinct, Robeson Ranch, particularly. Mm-hmm. What precinct is that? 4003.
4003. And I know it well.
You know that well.
You know that well. You've been there. You've heard of that.
I actually don't know it well, but I followed the numbers very closely when I ran. So
right. Yeah. So I think that's one reason. The year before that, I don't know. As soon as we look at the data, we'll be able to tell you if it was up or down from then. But I think you have a lot of things. You have a lot of issues that come into play that energize certain people. And I think my point is that this year it appeared that the traction of the people kind of running around with their hair on fire claiming things, they didn't have a lot of traction this year. They got on their Facebook groups, they said what they wanted to say, and those things kind of faded by the wayside, I felt, pretty quickly this year, as opposed to always being a constant hammering, and other people who didn't know as much got involved and piled on. But that's just kind of the feeling I have. I think that people who every campaign season that just start screaming their head off, I think those people are being recognized as those people now. Would you say that?
So I think... So I'm going to take issue with people running around screaming like their hair is on fire. I think when people have a real legit concern in Denton, I think it is up to our elected officials to take those concerns seriously. But I do think, too, that maybe some of the fervor that we've seen in the last couple of elections wasn't quite as fervorous. Is that a word? This year, a lot of the things that people have been asking for over the last couple of years, a new city manager, new legal, an ethics ordinance, a city auditor. A lot of that stuff's kind of gotten implemented to some degree over the last couple of years. And so I think, I think some of the issues that I heard come up during the city council, this recent election was kind of more like, how are we going to keep this moving forward? And also, what about Buc-ee's? People are still really upset about that and want to kind of, it's a done deal. But, how can we have more transparency going forward? Like this Project High Flyer thing, for example, that was a big thing in the news recently. So I think it's a little less, maybe a little less passionate, but I think people are still feeling a little bit bruised from the past too, and I think we're still seeing some of those issues come up today.
Sure. What are your top 3 issues that you saw, though? How did you break that down?
Well, so the ethics ordinance only got passed last week, so I think that was still on people's minds. It's interesting, though, because I went to the League of Women Voters forum. That was unfortunately the only one I could make it to this year. And it was the difference between the city council forum and the school board forum was really different. So with the city council, and I think we've all seen this, we've all ran for office. Glenn, when did you run? It was 2013, maybe?
13 or 14?
It was a minute ago, yeah. But, I think we all see this, too, when you run for city council. You've got these big ideas, right? That's why you want to run.
Yeah.
And you go to these forums, and, all the questions are how corrupt is city government on a scale of 9 to 10? And you're just like, can we talk about the future, right?
Right.
And I saw that a lot at the League of Women Voters forum, but then the school board forum I thought was really fascinating because people were talking about, guns in schools and sidewalks and, testing standards and, keeping kids safe in the future. And I just...
Right, so the guns, that was actually a national issue that overflowed into the current school board.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Did you not make it to that forum?
No.
Oh, it was fascinating. Yeah, it was really great. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's going to be a question tonight. Is we have, for the first time in a long time, a really contested school board election.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Those elections are typically somebody kind of gets the shoulder tapped. They're a good person in the community. They run. They don't have very much opposition, and so those folks haven't really run a big time election since they've been in office. Mm-hmm. So now we have some big elections. There's some big people in Dallas running some of these races. Mm-hmm. There's be more to talk about that tonight as we see those coming in. Obviously, a pretty hot school bond election that we're going to see. The question becomes, for me, looking at a city race, are people coming to the election booth who are just focused on school issues? Because there's people who've not been paying attention to city issues. What are they doing when they get to those 3 city places? Who are they clicking for? Are they choosing? Are they not? How is that influencing? Who's that helping?
Right.
Who's that not helping? To me, there's a real wild card. If I'm a candidate running in this race, I'm a little bit worried of that unknown that I didn't prepare for.
That's exactly right. You can't predict the behavior of people who are going in, who are being energized by the school bond and the school board issue right now. And we'll see tonight, I think we'll be able to look at the data and say, did that push people into the voting booth or not? And if it did or not, what's the outcome of that? How do those people vote? Can we take a look at that and kind of square that up?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So I was out block walking today for a candidate and ran into I encouraged her. I said, today's the last day to vote. Make sure you get over to North Lakes. That's your polling site. And she said, I'm a teacher. I already voted. And she said, they've just been driving this home, And I said, well, yeah, I mean, heaven forbid you should have a quote unquote culture of voting, right? Like Attorney General Paxton doesn't want us to have. And I think, and I do think with this big school bond and then, a couple of contested school board races, you are going to see probably a higher turnout of teachers. I would hope that the teachers would show up. I would hope that everyone would show up. But I do think that's probably going to be definitely a demographic that maybe we could look at in the future. I wonder if our data analysis could.
What did you hear out there today?
When I was block walking?
Yeah.
It was interesting. I only had an hour, so I just had like 10 houses I could hit, and they were all in the same street. It was great. One person opened the door a crack, saw me, and closed it quickly. And I was like, are you putting your dog away? Like, I didn't, and like, they didn't come back. And
what was their address? What's their address?
I'm not saying. I was like, okay. So I just like wrote down a thing. I'm like, hey, don't forget to vote. A couple people weren't home. I tried going early this morning, so I wanted to get people on their way out the door so they could, make it a day. And what was so mind-boggling was that, I ran into like 4 different people who said, yeah, we've been planning on voting. Wait, today's the last day? And I'm like, oh my God, you guys, yes, today, like, please go vote. And they said they would. But it was just, people, like, they were following the elections. They knew who they were going to vote for, and then just, like, snuck up on them. Yeah. And they forgot that today was the day, so I was really glad I caught
Well, that's really the heavy lift in a low turnout election is just getting people to show up and vote. You look at what makes up a campaign, and you've got forums, you've got mailers, you've got letters from people, you have all these things. But really the hardest thing and the biggest percentage of like what is important in a campaign is literally getting people to show up and cast a ballot.
And there's so much energy into voter registration. And I love that, because Texas does not make it easy for people to register to vote. There's a lot of states that you can just do it online. And in Texas, I mean, it's a mess in Texas. That's a whole different podcast. But I think, it's for as much energy as we put into voter registration, I wish we put that much energy into voter mobilization. So now you're registered. Do you have a plan to vote? What day are you? Let's all make it together.
We're getting results. Sorry to break into this.
That's great. I'm rambling.
We're getting results in the place 5 race. We're seeing Aaron Fuzzy Nickwitz up 48%. Deb Armentor's next with 35.7% to Jody. Vickers Nance got 11%, and Bud Voken got 4.8%. So, Aaron, it looks like a runoff right now, but we still have final day voting to see what goes into that. So pay attention to that one, but Aaron's sitting with a good lead.
Yeah, that one could change. That one could change, because all he's got to get is 50% plus 1 vote.
So let's move on to the place 6 just to get everyone caught up. Paul Meltzer is up pretty handedly with 53% to Frank Dudowitz 41%. Brian, who hasn't even been in the race.
Who's Brian?
Denton, give me a break. 274 people voted for a guy who showed up to one forum and has been AWOL ever since.
I legit don't know
Denton,
who that
please.
is.
Those must be people who didn't know what they were doing. So, but that is looking, we'll be talking about people's safety coming in with election day votes.
Let's
in
talk
the mayor
about the
place, look at this. Chris Watts up 72% to Neil Durant's 27%. Good night, Neil Durant. That race we can safely call for Chris Watts. That's impossible to overcome with election day votes. But I want to look at clicking over to the Denton ISD votes. We're seeing Barbara Burns is safely taking control of her seat with 53%. Brad Fitcher next with 27%. So that is pretty clear so far. Heading into the place 2, which was probably the more controversial race, Janetta Smith looks like she's hanging on to a lead at 46.5% to David Shuck's 35%. And so that one could go to a runoff as well, depending on how Election Day votes go, but she is currently in the lead again. I'm not sure how runoffs work in school boards.
So I followed this last year. I cannot remember who
I don't believe they necessarily need to have 50%.
You don't need to get 50%. You just have to have a majority.
We'll check on that.
There was someone last year on the school board who didn't get 50%, but they did get a majority, and there was.
And the one we're really waiting on is in Denton ISD is the proposition for the school bond. Very safely wins tonight with a 4 at 73.8% to against at 26.
What can we throw up on the
kids.
screen? Can you throw anything up on the screen for us?
No. Let me go ahead and I'm going to throw this up on the screen until we get some data guys here that we can be looking at some of this.
So here's something pretty interesting. We've got 7,000 votes coming in for the Denton ISD proposition, and 5,000 coming in for mayor. So you've got people going to the polls and casting a vote for the Denton ISD proposition, but not casting a vote for any other race. I think that's kind of an interesting thing, just looking at these first results.
Absolutely, and even just looking, I'm sorry, did you already say that for the school board? Because I was looking at data too, but like even there's, several hundred more, about 500 more votes so far for the school bond over, just place 1 for school board.
Well, keep in mind that the school district boundaries are much larger than the city boundaries. And so when you're looking at this and you're looking at the difference in voting totals, Denton ISD boundaries go well beyond the city.
Yeah.
So they're showing you the entire vote total all throughout the county there, whether or not they're in the city. So probably not a lot you can make of that other than the fact that there's people outside the city of Denton.
Can we talk about this voter turnout, though, y'all? 4.9%.
Well, again, this is just early voting.
Yeah.
And we know that today's not going to be, historically, it's not going to be great.
I'm still disappointed.
So,
I'm just going to say.
Are we surprised? Let's start with the fuzzy race. Glenn, he's safely up. Deb, this is her second time to run.
Yeah, I think if you listen to any talk between the moment we had 4 people in that race till now, everyone was assuming this was going to go to a runoff. It was more unlikely that somebody would win this one outright. Of course, it's still not over. I think that's a deficit he can make up, especially looking at some of the precincts that he's down.
Where'd you get that map?
Yeah, that you get a click on the detail right there.
Detail. I'm just gonna look over your shoulder.
So check this out. In precinct 4003, which is Robeson Ranch, we've got Fuzzy with 73% of the vote, Deb with 17% of the vote. You know, that's pretty on track with what I predicted for there.
Yeah, but you know, so the last time there was an at-large race, right? And who was it? It was Mike Cheeves or whatever. He was endorsed in Robeson, and he didn't. I mean, he didn't go very far. Like that was the only precinct where he got votes.
Yeah, he beat Dalton there, but if you remember, Dalton was down the entire night and then came out with like 50.3 of the vote at the end of the day.
Squeaked it in, yeah.
And
but my point is, you know, we've seen, you know, when, you know, district-wide, you know, when it's just a D3 race, you know, Robeson has a real, you know, heavy presence, right? But now, when you look at, you know, the last at-large races, what I'm saying is that Mike Cheeves was the one who was endorsed down there, and he didn't get very far. And when you look at, I don't know, I just find that interesting, like, because we're looking at a citywide race.
That's right.
So Aaron must have picked up those votes, not just in Robeson, but elsewhere. So, kind of curious to see when our data geeks get here to show us.
Well, we got some data geeks running some things right now, and in fact, in a minute, we're going to hear from one of these candidates. Fuzzy is with us and going to join us live in the studio to get some reaction.
There we go.
To his results. So,
do y'all predict these results to change much, like the
I think
Quist Armentor race?
I think that's what we're going to ask Patrick and Jesse to chime in on as it relates to what are the abilities. What do they need to do in terms of final day voting in order to overcome that gap? Because it actually is larger than you think when you think about they're both going to be getting votes. And so it's a matter of, is somebody able to get so many more votes in election day than what they got in early voting? And what we know is a smaller turnout. So we'll see. And they'll be able to do that. Clearly, I think we can go ahead and say the mayor's race is done.
Yeah.
Place 6 looks pretty hard to overcome that. Seeing that gap, I don't see Brian Menelis getting much more in order to take away from that. But I guess the question we have, and we even have Jody here today, and we're going to ask some of these questions as well. But as we look at the 3rd and 4th place and place 5, who did they take votes away from? Is there any sense we have, kind of based on looking at this election, as to whether or not, say, Jody, who got a sizable amount with 11%, whether that was taken away from Deb, or whether that was taken away from Fuzzy, or is it pretty much split down the middle?
Yeah, so it was the last time there was an at-large race, right? So we had really close results between Sarah Bagari and Greg Johnson, and it was final day results that came in that squeaked Sarah in over the top. So I'd be kind of curious to see.
We want to go ahead and welcome here. We have a candidate for place 5, Aaron Fuzzy Newquist. Aaron, come on in and take a seat here.
Hey,
welcome to Politically Denton.
Thanks for having me.
Congratulations.
Yeah, good to see you.
Good to see you. Looks like you're currently in the lead.
Yeah, it's exciting.
How do you feel about that?
Well, I think it's exciting. I'm really glad that the message got out, and it looks like it was well received. So, looking forward to see what the rest of the night holds.
Yeah. What do you feel about Election Day? You were probably out there at some of the sites, talking to people, watching folks out. What sort of turnout did it look like today?
I was up at the North Library, and it was vigorous. I mean, there was a lot. It was a steady stream, and it was still going when I had to check out at around 5 o'clock. So I think today's turnout was very, very good. I mean, I think the number we're going to see is going to be definitely over 1,500, and I don't know, maybe closer to 1,900 today.
So what's your feel on the numbers coming in at District 2, just from what you could tell by talking with folks? Do you have any sense of that? Or because, certain people come over and they shake your hand and they're like, oh, I voted, yeah, my vote, or did you get a lot of that? Or
well, with a name like Fuzzy, you get a lot of looks. So it's hard. You know what I mean? It's hard to tell exactly what that look means when you get it. But, in general, I think everybody today, the voting seemed like they were there to vote their share and not so much to vote against things or to vote, angrily or anything like that. I felt like people were there to get involved, and be a part of the process. That's what I felt like. So it was good.
Yeah. So looking back on it, this was your first run. I know you've spoken in the past about how you've been involved in the city, and people have maybe talked to you in the past about maybe running. You decided to run this year. Any kind of reflections on the last couple of months? How are you going to take a nap tomorrow?
Yeah.
Like what?
No.
Like just
no.
how you feel?
We have a kid baseball game at 9:45, so no, we'll be up and out of the house before 8.
Just general reflections of like what it's like to be a candidate in the public eye. What was that process like for you?
Unpredictable.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's you just never know when something's going to come up. At the bank, I would always teach the employees the most important customer is the one in front of you right now. Right? You need to make sure that they're addressed, that they feel like at the very least you understand the problem and that you've got a grasp of it, and that when they walk away comfortable that they've gotten their message to you. Same thing happens, I think, as a candidate. Folks want to talk to you, they want to talk to you now. Whatever they have to talk about is the most important thing, and they have to feel like it's the most important thing. You have to just help them feel like you understood it. As soon as they walk away, somebody with a different point's coming right behind them. And so you can't, there's nothing you can do to control that stream, especially right now during a campaign. So I think just that was probably getting used to that. Took a little bit of time, but getting the processes down. Yeah. The daily process too.
So you probably had a strategy already laid out for a runoff. I mean, this was the race that everyone was saying from the moment that everyone applied for the position that this was going to be where the runoff was going to be. How do you run a campaign in a runoff scenario?
Well, you know what? I think we're going to stay on message of, low taxes, better paying jobs, better city services, right? Whether we're in the regular campaign or we're in a runoff, I think those are the things that ultimately matter. They're the things that so far have put us in the position we are. And frankly, with all the good support we had, I don't think we're completely done tonight. I mean, could we climb a couple points? Maybe, we'll see. But with 4 people in a race, a runoff is always, that's mathematically, if 3 opponents get 15%, I mean, they've pretty much got half right there. So, but I don't think anything changes. I think we continue to put out a positive message.
Does anyone know when the runoff election is?
June. It's
yeah,
June.
somebody told me June.
We just get so many chances to vote because we got the primary runoff coming up for state office. That's also this month, May 22nd, I think. Is that right, Glenn? You know that number.
It sounds right,
you
but
corrected me at
confirm.
Rotary one time about that. And then the council runoff is usually in June.
Yeah. I know the candidates. We're trying to get that changed to be like July or August so we can continue to campaign more.
Yeah.
Just what you need. Just take your whole summer away from it. Yeah. Well, Fuzzy, thank you so much for participating. You participated in an interview, our debate, and certainly coming here live tonight. We really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you.
And congratulations. We all know how hard it is to get out there and run for office.
Man, it's not easy.
And it looks like you may sew it up tonight. We're going to see. We're going to get some analysis from folks to see what that's going to take. But if not, it looks like we're going to have to, tell people do this one more time.
Yeah. Thank you guys for opening up that podcast to me. I think that was extremely important. And to everybody who helped me, especially my wife, Jesse, my son, Brady, everybody who did anything to help us, I really do appreciate it. And, in the event of a runoff, I know that together we can prevail and get our message out there of low taxes, better city services, and higher paying jobs here in Denton.
Now, I have to ask, it feels like every morning I would get to work and, Facebook would be pulled up, and I felt like I would have breakfast with you and your wife every morning. Now, you have probably the most supportive spouse I've ever seen in a city election. What's your key to that?
I do. I don't know. I don't know.
I think she might be watching, so now's your chance to say something really nice.
Yeah. I love you, honey. No,
that's great.
She has been tremendous, and she enjoyed working the polls today. A lot of folks recognized her from the videos today, and that might have actually earned us a couple votes.
Yeah.
So perhaps if I get elected, we'll do kind of a semi-regular thing where we kind of communicate with the folks what's going on here in Denton. And
so it's kind of like a twofer. It's a twofer.
Yeah, it might be a fun way to engage with Denton and kind of tell them what's going on.
Absolutely. Well, we've all run. I mean, all of us sitting at the table have all run for public office before, and we know, it's you don't do it alone. It really is, your significant other, your spouse, at
kids.
home, your kids. Oh
Yeah.
my God, I didn't see my kids for like months, right? Man, that sucks. And you go to these debates and these forums, and they stay late, and then everyone wants to shake your hand. And of course, you can't leave. You go home and you're exhausted, and your kids are in bed, and you try and sleep as late as you can so you can be fresh for the next day. And the kids get up and they go to school, and you're like, I've got kids. Yeah. So, it really is. It's a family effort when you're running for office, especially at the local level. You don't get that party support. You don't get those, party volunteers. It's a family. It's a family affair for sure.
You're right.
So, yeah.
And absolutely, thanks for throwing your hat in the ring for sure. And
You're welcome.
yeah, I guess we'll see how it turns out the rest of the night. Kevin, do we have anything else coming in right now?
We do, and so thanks, Fuzzy. I'm going to go get some other folks and talk to our data guys, and you guys continue the conversation.
Right. Yeah. No, it's not. It's my water. It's not moonshine. I promise.
That's moonshine. We all know that.
Yeah.
Amber.
Good to see you, man. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for dropping by.
Yeah.
You've got a great tan, obviously, from being out there. So
It's all that block walking, right?
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's funny how the campaign season always starts when it's bitterly cold and windy and awful outside, and then it ends up coming to a conclusion on a day like today where it's bright and sunny and beautiful.
So
and
on
it's
election
springtime.
day when I ran, there were like tornadoes. It was,
Oh my
it was
goodness.
like downpour rain. And I was committed. I'm like, I'm going to stand at North Lakes Rec
We're gonna
Center
do this.
until the polls close.
Rain or shine.
And I'd hear the tornado sirens go, and I'm like, I'm going to step inside for just a second, but I'll be right back.
Just a second. Just a second.
But today was beautiful. I really hope a lot of people got out. In fact, when I was block walking today, I did one of the houses. I knocked on the door. He had a young daughter there, and I was like, you should take your dad to the park because across the street is North Lakes Rec Center. You can get a sticker.
Yeah.
An I voted sticker, and she's
Yeah.
like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you should bring your dad to the polls." She's like, "Okay."
Kids love stickers. Kids love stickers.
Where's your I voted sticker, Glenn?
Yeah. I
What is
voted
it?
earlier in the week. What are you talking about?
I did too, and I'm wearing mine. Is this voter fraud that I'm wearing my sticker on a day that I didn't vote?
Yes, that is.
That's voter
Technically,
fraud.
by law,
Someone alert the Pence Commission on
that's
that.
an FEC violation right there.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, so what else is going on?
Well, is Mayor Watts going to call in? I had heard a rumor that he was going to call in.
Yeah, he is. I've got my phone right here.
Okay.
He did confirm that he would be calling in.
How do you do that? I'm kind of. I've never been on a podcast before. Like, do you like? How do you do that?
We are literally just going to hold the microphone up to the phone.
Speakerphone?
Yeah, we're very
So
low-fi here.
high-tech.
Yeah,
I
me
love
and Kevin actually tested it before. So we have another candidate
Hi,
coming
Jody.
to sit in the hot seat.
Hey, welcome. How's it going?
How are you doing? Good to see you.
Okay.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming down. Thanks for joining.
Jody,
Yeah.
11%.
Hey, I thought I wouldn't even get 100.
Yeah.
I knew I had 15 confirmed votes of people who told me they voted for me.
Yeah.
So to think that 500 people,
571.
You've exceeded all
Jody.
expectations.
That's
Well
amazing.
done.
That's amazing.
Well done.
that is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
How do you feel? How do you
Congratulations.
feel sitting on this side? So the election probably for you is over after tonight.
Yes.
Even though this race might go into a runoff. How are you feeling after this? I know you got in. You running the challenge yourself. You ran a really positive campaign on a lot of great issues.
I did.
How do you feel about this?
I stayed positive. I put social work values out there. It was a personal challenge. I did all the forums. I never thought I would survive that.
They're tough.
And I'm super proud of myself.
Yeah.
I am, who knows what I could do from here.
Well, you were just such a great sport about it, and you brought a really great perspective
Yeah.
to the campaign. The perspective of someone who is out to help people, and isn't that what being on council is
Right.
about? Is helping people and listening to people and making sure people's voices are heard. I thought that was really great.
Well, I did, because it is about the people. And I always said council is a servant position. It's a labor of love. And that's why I would be doing it, And so the Rodens tonight, and I am totally fine with that. I start grad school in May. So I'm good.
There we go.
Jody, I just thought you ran such a positive campaign. I saw you at the League of Women Voters Forum, and you're like, I'm a lot better with one-on-one, I promise. But and when you have like 1 minute to talk about this huge issue, it can be tough. And I thought you stayed on point. You stayed on message. You stayed really positive. I thought you were really relatable. And, as someone who ran and lost, I can say from experience, I think two things. One is those ideas that you bring to the race continue, right? So some of the big ideas that you brought forward, we're going to continue that conversation as a city. The second thing I can speak from experience is that life always puts you exactly where you need to be.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, and it might not seem like it in the moment, but kind of looking back on it, you're like, yeah, that was supposed to happen. So I'm just incredibly proud of you. And girl, 571 votes, and there's still more votes coming in. I mean, you could easily clear 700, like 800. Why not 1,000? Let's be 1,000.
If I had all these people's addresses, I would write them a personal thank you note.
I know that.
It might be postcards
You would.
because that's a little bit easier. But yeah,
Postcard writing party at Jody's.
Now
tonight.
we got to keep the politics going. So we might be heading into a runoff with this particular election.
yes.
A lot of people are wondering. They're like, "Wow, that's 11%. Can these people come back and vote for me in this election?" Do you see yourself in the event this goes to a runoff? Do you see yourself endorsing one candidate or the other?
I do.
Who would that be?
I'm not going to say.
Oh, so someday you may say, but maybe just not tonight.
We'll see if there's a runoff, then we'll get
He knows who he is.
Okay. Bud voting. All right.
No, it has been, as I said, it's been a very positive campaign, but Fuzzy had my back the entire time. He never wavered in his support. He was always supportive of me, and when I was faltering, he was there to pick me up. So, yeah.
Wow.
That's the great thing about
Personal
local.
story.
You kind of want to
That's
cry.
great.
That's
local,
great. That's
local
awesome.
politics. I mean, right? It's that personal connection.
Just
right?
on the campaign trail.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's very...
Yeah, because we were always sitting by each other because, ballot,
Sure.
it was him, me, and then the others. And I don't know how many thumbs up I got. I went to the Chamber of Commerce forum, and I was silly enough. I thought it was really just a lunch, and it turned out to be a forum.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal.
I was the
all
only
these
one.
people are staring at
I
you.
was the only one there who didn't realize it was going to be a forum when I walked in.
Yeah. Why do
and,
we have
and
a
I was ready.
microphone?
I was like, I'm going to leave because I have a severe anxiety disorder.
Yeah.
And
And
I was like-
they didn't bring you wine.
they didn't bring me anything, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And he's like, you can stay, you can do this, you got this, and he's trying to fill me in on what the chamber does with the city, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. But when people have your back, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's good. Well, I think we broke some news tonight on a possible runoff endorsement. But thank you so much for running. Thanks for stopping by tonight.
sure, I love you
And
guys.
Yeah,
please
thank you.
stay plugged into city politics as you've been up to this point because you're a great voice to have at the table.
Absolutely.
And I'm really looking forward to what you do in the future because when you lose, you have so many options of things that you can do and be involved in. Like you really do. So I'm really excited about seeing what you do
thank you.
in the coming years. So
Thanks.
thank you again for coming on.
Thanks, Jody.
Thank
and
you.
great job, really.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Great job.
good job. It looks like Kevin is going to run out and see if we can find an analyst to help us take a look.
Where's our data geeks?
I know.
They're the most interesting part of this.
Yeah,
really.
I saw Patrick was looking for a parking spot, so I'm sure he's here.
Where's the
I'm sure he's
parking?
here. I'm texting with a couple other people to see if we can get some phone interviews
I'm
going.
like, Glenn, are you gonna have candidates? And he's like, yeah, they'll just stop in real quick in between. And I'm like, dude, there's no parking. You're gonna spend 20 minutes looking for parking. I don't know. So you're not having any school board people come on, huh?
No, that's something we really just started off covering city council and kind of made the decision that that's kind of where we were going to leave it for this race. I don't know if the school board actually becomes more of a.
I mean, I tell you what, y'all, that was
race.
a really that was so fascinating, that forum. And then when you have that race between Angela Sid and Janetta Smith and David Shuck, who has been endorsed by Empower Texans, right? I mean, Empower Texans is really trying to get in at that local level, school board and city council, because that's the farm league, right?
Yeah.
And they rise up to these higher offices, and that was a really fascinating race to watch. And I'm just, I'm not going to tell you how to do your job, but that would have been really great to
I
have one
thought
of them
about
there.
it halfway through when, again, it's never been a race to pay much attention to. And so this
But
one just
maybe
kind of...
we should.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it kind of snuck up on us.
Yeah.
And I kind of regret it, given there's been a lot of energy in that. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, no doubt, next time, hopefully you'll come back on to help with that.
Yeah.
Because I know you've got a lot of passion around educational issues and whatnot as having two kids in the system.
in public school, yeah.
And so, well, do we have any candidates calling in, Glenn, anytime soon? Because we got a couple people outside that are ready to come on and join us for some commentary.
I'm texting with a couple of folks. I haven't heard back for sure. People are probably doing the same thing we're doing or listening to what we're doing, waiting for our analysts to kind of come on. Who do we have kind of
So let me go ahead and grab
on
somebody.
base?
Hang on.
Yeah.
Who you got? This is fun because we have no idea who Kevin is going to grab.
Who's behind door number one?
Who could it be? Who's it going to be? Who's it
Coming
be?
in now.
Oh,
Who do we got?
awesome!
Who we
This is
got?
great. You guys you're gonna love this.
Hey.
How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. How are you guys?
Good. It's good to see you.
good to
I
see
don't
you,
know if
too.
actually have I met you?
Yeah, we protested together, but that's
Probably like
not
you and me and like all my best friends.
Yeah.
I know.
Bonding.
Good to see you.
I guess meet your
Welcome.
husband.
Welcome back to Politically Denton.
Thank you.
welcome
Thank you for
back.
having
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, I
delightful.
I mean, I'm not much of a podcast listener. Like, who's got time?
Okay.
I'm sorry, and I'm
It's
talking
all
to
right.
three
It's the
people.
best content on the internet.
No, it's
No,
great. It's great,
I
yeah.
who's got time? But I listened to
You can
the
listen while doing anything. Though.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
can,
Driving?
No,
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
more of
sitting
like an
there.
audiobook type person. So,
Okay. I mean, I can get behind
yeah.
that. Okay.
So, but I did. I listened to the pod, and it was fantastic.
Oh.
It was
Oh, you're
so.
the one
you,
where
Amber.
she,
Yeah.
took us around the block and beat us up behind the building. And
I
I
would
felt like
expect
that was
nothing.
pretty amicable, Kevin. I mean, did you come away differently?
I do
than
know
that?
it was a great conversation.
She does her homework.
She does her homework.
Yeah.
She's very talented, and that's why we invited you back.
Thank you so much.
So I know you in that conversation we had. We
Mm-hmm.
were talking generally speaking, state issues, national
Oh,
issues,
yeah.
and whatnot. And tonight we're focusing on very hyper local
Okay,
Okay, wait.
the
issues.
macro
Let's stop.
to the micro.
Because the people who are listening at home and not watching this, who do we have behind the microphone?
Oh.
Can you tell us more about our special guest?
Yeah,
We just jumped right into it.
Yeah, everyone knows Olivia. Yeah,
They really don't.
they don't. Okay,
Really don't.
Well, this is Olivia Countryman, who is the host.
There's a
of,
justice in there.
Yeah, my name is Olivia
Sorry,
Justice.
Olivia
Countryman.
Justice Countryman.
Perhaps the most
Justice is her
important
middle
part.
name.
And she's
Literally.
she's actually wearing the shirt
Wearing
of
some
her
merch.
podcast,
Awesome.
dressed for the
Yeah.
podcast. Check it out on iTunes, Stitcher, all those things. It's a great podcast. But like we were talking about, you were one of our first guests, I guess. You were our very first guest to come on.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
I didn't know I had that on. So it was like me, and then it was Beto,
Yeah,
and that was
exactly
you know, obviously in line.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So
No, so we were talking very national issues, state issues.
Yeah.
We're talking very local issues tonight.
Yes.
Is this something you've been paying attention to? Have you been paying attention to local issues as much as you're paying attention to the national
I've
state
been
issues?
paying attention. No, not on the same level. So I mean, like I consume a couple of different newspapers every morning before I dig into things. And so, like, yes, my attention to the national issues is at a whole other level than what I do in local issues. But I live here.
Yeah.
I live here. I'm a musician in this town. I've seen what's happened to the musicians and the artists in this town over the past 10 years. I've seen what's been happening to my family as we try and find a place to live, and just what's going on at the universities where I, make my day job. So yeah, I pay attention to it in that regard because it affects every aspect of my life.
Yeah.
I drive to get to my house on a road that literally is like a third world country because the roads aren't kept up here. Literally, I've been in third world countries that have better roads than Denton.
Ouch.
Literally.
You hear that? Denton. Ouch.
So roads obviously were an important issue to you coming into this election.
Number one. I'm not gonna lie, they were number one.
Were you vocal in support of any particular candidate in this particular election cycle, or any you want to talk about tonight?
No, I mean, I was able to get two people to come on the pod. I was able to interview Paul Meltzer and Deb Armentor, and those only happened because I literally ran into them in public and was like, oh, let me ask you while we're here in the literal coffee shop. So I was able to interview those two. I actually hadn't met them before they came on the pod, and I put headphones on them and turned on the recording device. But those were good conversations. I listened to the interviews you guys did because you were workhorses.
there were a lot of them.
There were. Yeah.
There was a lot. Yeah.
That was intense. I'm looking at you. I know you do the editing here. Oh
yeah,
my
people
God.
were asking me like, when are these going to come out? Or who's that guy that said that thing then? And I'm like, I have no idea. It's a blur. Like I cannot keep it straight. I have no idea. So,
Right.
Yeah, it was a lot, but it was fun to do. So
Yeah.
So out there is here's a question that I think everyone wants to know. So, I was sitting in here the last protest there was on downtown Denton. I was working
Which
here.
one?
Yeah, right.
It was the anniversary of the first big protest that came about
the anniversary of the
after
Women's
Trump's-
March.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Women's March.
So people were marching down this street, literally.
Yep,
That was
literally.
great.
Times Square.
I was there.
Gobs and gobs of people. Now, I will say,
Mm-hmm.
I think more people were there than have voted in this election.
Yes.
So
Perhaps,
talk to me about, and I think this is what a lot of people want to know. You can get a bunch of people riled up against this person or that person at the national level, and they all live here locally. Why is that not translating into people showing up to vote in elections like school board and city council? Where's the disconnect, and how do we fix that?
I think it has a lot to do with like the pageantry of what's going on in national politics. You know, I've heard a couple of people say in the past couple of days that like, oh, I'm ready for the next episode to come out, when it's like, no, it's not an episode. It's today's news cycle, guys. This is Game of Thrones. It's something totally different.
Yeah.
And so there's an element of that that's this, I don't know, it's like the reality TV of what's happening nationally. And that sounds like a way of making it trite and seem like it's something that's not very serious when it is very serious.
Right.
And we don't have that in Denton. You know, talking about roads or talking about school board elections and talking about things that are going on in city council, that's not as sexy and it's not as interesting. Just straight up. It's not
What
as
we're trying
interesting.
to do tonight. is
Yes,
make
I
it-
know. This is wonderful.
Let's make politics sexy again. No, I'd like to chime in on that though too, right? Because I mean, honestly, I think low voter turnout is intentional. I may say that with like from the depth of my heart.
By
we
who,
don't
though?
make it by
makes it intentional?
by the people in power, because we don't make it easy for people to register to vote.
Sure,
There's
sure.
like, I don't know, 20 states out there at least that let people just register online, right?
Right.
Then you get to the polls and you have to have a certain kind of ID, right? So I intentionally vote with my passport card just to see if anyone's going to bat an eye at this 40-year-old white lady, you know, who's showing this, because I know people of color who've tried voting with their IDs, who try voting with their passports, who get turned away because, quote unquote, that's too easy to.
Right, but our country was literally founded on limited democracy, like white landowning males.
Yeah,
That was
right,
it for
but
a very long time.
And they
I feel
really
like
have a
we've all
hard time
agreed
giving
that's
up
not-
that power.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, I really feel like this is, like, why do we have city council elections usually during finals and during graduation? Now, I know it's state law, right? So, like, we only have certain days that we can have these elections. But why? But why is that? Why do we make it hard for people to vote instead of easier? So I
what would
hear
you
what
do?
you're saying,
Yeah.
but I think part of a big part of why we have low voter turnout is we just make it too hard for people to register to vote, to get to the polls. I have a friend who tried going to the polls. She had her Texas driver's license had a different address from where she's currently registered to vote, and the poll worker wrongly turned her away. Now, you can be a student with maybe your driver's license says that you live in Tyler, but you're registered to vote in Denton. Doesn't matter what your address says. My passport card doesn't have my address on it, right? And I got to vote, right? It doesn't matter what your address says on your card. It's supposed to be a state-issued ID with your photo on it, right?
Right.
But yet your UNT ID, that's a state-issued ID. That doesn't work,
Right.
but your concealed handgun license works. I mean, it's baked into the system that we're supposed to have low voter turnout, and it's bullshit.
Well,
Well,
how
and
did-
that's why it's gone through multiple rounds at the Supreme Court, at the Texas Supreme Court with the State Court of Appeals. Like, it's going through multiple rounds where multiple judges at high levels have struck it down and said this is unconstitutional. Now, it's still in play. But yeah, this is something that we know it's not just prohibitive, but multiple judges have said this is an unconstitutional rule. So yeah, you're absolutely right,
Yeah,
Amber.
the most recent, I believe the most recent ruling says that it's okay for now, but there's
Right.
flaws in it. But it's intentional, and we people who do show up to vote need to make sure that we are voting in the primaries, voting every time there's something coming up, so that we can try and change the system, because it's not going to change unless the people in power change. But they're holding on to power so hard that they make it hard for us to get.
So what's your
Yeah.
take on the double voting locations per district? Did that help or hurt?
Yeah, tell me. Yeah, no, you tell me more about that. I didn't know that was a thing until today because I voted early.
Right. So the thing that I think might have actually made it harder and more of a pain in the butt is it was by precinct. You had to know what precinct you're in.
Yes.
Who knows
I
what
did.
precinct they're in?
I did not.
people don't.
Yeah.
And then they had to go to the not the place that they always go, that they've been going for 20 years, but they might have to go to another location. it seems like that idea might have been on good faith, like let's double the amount of places people can vote. But I think we also took people from certain precincts and made it actually harder for them to actually get there first try. So I thought that was interesting. It kind of surprised me as well when I realized it was by precinct.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's, all the more reason to get out and vote early, because you can vote anywhere in your county. I mean, you could work in Louisville and vote
anywhere.
down there on your lunch break.
Yeah.
So.
When people don't vote early, I'm just like, you're driving me insane.
I know my husband voted today.
That was one of me.
What if you get
Don't
sick?
wait. You voted today?
Yeah, I was sick all week. Like, I kept thinking.
All right.
Yeah,
You
so
drive me insane.
we tried. My husband went with me because somebody's got to cattle prod them things. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, we
That's
got the
awesome.
signal from Kevin. We're supposed to wrap it up. So
Thank you so much for coming on. Yeah,
guys,
we
this is
appreciate you.
wonderful.
Fantastic.
Always good to
Love
see you. Thank
to see
you.
you.
Love
Proud of
talking
your
to
work.
intelligent women. So thank
Oh,
you very
my,
much.
Amber.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
And I believe we're waiting for someone from the school, the Denton ISC to come on.
Oh, from the school bond?
Yeah, for the school
Oh,
bond.
that's great. Yes.
Here we go. Here we go.
Hey, Dr. Wilson
We got
in the house.
we got
How's
the
it
big
going?
wig coming.
I only ever see you at Rotary meetings, so this is really nice.
That's the only time, right?
Yeah.
Welcome. I'm good.
How are you
I'm
doing?
good.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, appreciate you being
Absolutely.
on.
So you guys, at least from the bond proposition, you're looking pretty confident with
Solid.
73% of the vote. Are you surprised?
Our community is so supportive of our schools that I wouldn't say surprised. I would say relieved and grateful and appreciative that our community really supports public education, and just looking forward to doing what our citizens ask us to do for our children.
Yeah.
So when you say surprise isn't the word. It's more just grateful and appreciative and relieved.
Yeah.
Right? We have so many things that we need to take care of and so many things that we need to do that relief is a big word for that.
And it was a ambitious undertaking. I mean, to put before the voters $750 million, regardless of whether there's a tax hike involved or not, which there isn't in this case.
Right.
That can take people by surprise, and people had the confidence to push the lever for yes for this one.
Well, it's one of those things when it comes to our debt service and how we pay for our schools, that our property values are what determines that, and growth in our community is what allows us the opportunity to build our schools without having a tax rate increase. And our citizens advisory committee that studied the needs of the district really it was important to them that there wasn't a tax rate increase and that we did it as growth allowed us to build our schools and make these projects
How many
happen.
students and households, I guess, get added to Denton and then Denton ISD every year? You'd said this once at Rotary.
Well, we get approximately 800 kids a year. Sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more.
That's like a whole new school.
It's like
isn't
a whole
it?
school
Oh my God.
every year.
Wow.
We've opened 11 schools in 10 years.
Wow.
Not any of those the last 10 years have been in the city of Denton. And this bond referendum allowed for us to come back in and provide some updates and upgrades to our existing facilities, and as well as handle district growth in the 380 corridor and to the south and the different places. So it's a great day for our school system, and it's a great day for our students and our parents.
Oh, it is. I'm not going to say which school my son goes to. I want to kind of keep some of that private, but he does go to one of these schools that was included in this bond. And he is, and I told you this when you came to speak at our Rotary lunch, which thank you again for that.
Absolutely.
That was great. He's in fourth grade. His classroom is completely windowless. He told me the other day that he excused himself to go to the bathroom just so he could watch it rain.
Sure.
Like that. I'm like, oh, baby. They've been twice this year. They had to move out of their classroom because there was a wasp infestation.
Sure.
How are and his grades, and it's amazing.
That's science class.
Yeah, oh my God. And he brings his report card home, and the kid is killing it in school. And it is amazing with, when you can't even meet your basic needs of like safety and comfort, what his teacher is able to do with that. So I'm so excited, not only for my son, but for like the teachers at that school to have, for everyone. It's such a great day.
It's a great day.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is a great place. And our residents know it's a great place. The thing that makes Denton special is that we're able to come together and really rally behind what's really, really important. When the entire world around us can be divided on both ends of the spectrum,
but then come back, regardless of where you are and any of your other political beliefs, and do what's right for our children, that makes this a special place.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to ask you to chime in on the school board races because you got to work with whoever gets elected on those things. And it is notable, though, that we have some contested races, whereas in the past they haven't been perhaps this robust.
Sure.
What do you make of that?
Well, I think we're starting to see that our community wants to be engaged and involved in our schools, and we've worked a long time to try to get more engagement and try to have people be involved in what we're doing. And so whenever you have more people involved in the school board races, that does nothing but to give us an opportunity to tell people what's going on in the school system, maybe give us an indication of how we can do a better job of communicating what's going on and what's happening. And really, if you have people that want to be engaged and be involved, you invite that. Our trustees really do work hard to do what's best for our students and for our teachers. And to have people want to be engaged and involved in that, I think that's a good thing. I don't think that's a negative thing at all.
So let me ask you this. One of the criticisms that came out in this campaign was that this school board for the last, I don't know how many votes unanimously on everything. Now, I'm sure you guys, like anyone in any governing body, a lot of sausage is kind of made kind of along the way to get to a final vote.
That's right.
What's your, do you defend the fact that you vote unanimously? Would you like to see more split votes? What does that mean from a school district perspective?
You know, the way our trustees vote, there's a lot of deliberation, a lot of time that comes into things. I'm going to just give a couple of examples. When we do attendance boundary adjustments, those aren't easy votes, right? And so rather than they're against certain neighborhoods being moved to certain schools because they're overcrowded, we just work through the process with our community to get to something that we think is reasonable for everyone that we all can get behind and support. So it's about collaboration. It's about working together. And I'm not one of those people that believes that you can only be held accountable when people vote no, right? I think that you have to have healthy discourse and get to a good point. The thing about public schools is we take criticism from so many outside factors, so many outside forces that aren't even in our communities. Right. And looking at different school choices and different things for our kids and for our families. And the public schools aren't doing this, and they're not doing enough, and they're not safe, and our kids aren't learning, and all these kinds of things that we really work hard to rally around together from the inside to be productive and to be positive in everything that we do. So I know people have criticisms about that, but frankly, if it's not something we can all get behind, we won't do it, right? Yeah. And that's kind of how that works. And so. Really for us, a one no a lot of times would be, well, if we're not all going to be behind it, then we need to consider if that's what we need to do, or we need to get more information or do something a little different.
So I know you've got probably a lot of people to talk to tonight, and we appreciate you stopping by. But one last question. I know on the state level, we saw a recent editorial, or that was actually a guest column come out from the superintendents of Dallas ISD, Fort Worth ISD, I think it was Plano, Richardson, all talking about the need for the state to get on board with more school funding because we're seeing a lot more kids of need. Right. I imagine you would co-sign on to that sort of thing. What do we need to be looking out for when it comes to the next legislative session as it relates to public ed?
Well, I think that we all need to be aware of the state's lagging commitment to public ed across this state. I'm all for accountability, financial accountability, academic accountability at the local level for what our citizens want and what our students deserve. When it comes down to school funding, in our district, school funding will drop to below 30% from the state level this year.
Wow.
And as late as 10 years ago, it was over 50%. So it's dropped 20%, their level of funding. And as our local property values rise, their commitment to us goes down. And yet we design accountability systems and assessment systems that are rigorous, right? I mean, they're difficult, and we want our students performing at that level. Without the resources to do it. Kids come to us now with all kinds of varying needs, and we take all of them. We don't turn any of them away. And it's hard on our teachers. It's hard on the resources. And if you want to compensate teachers appropriately, you have to have that balance between class sizes and the number of people that you have, and because you only have so many resources to go around.
Yeah.
And so what you're starting to see is in the next 24 to 36 months, unless the school funding system is changed, districts are all going to be at the breaking point of what they can do with their maintenance operations budget because costs are going to continue to rise. Fuel costs are going to continue to rise. It's not going to get any cheaper. And the commitment from our state needs to be there, especially when you think about property values have grown so much, and we constantly hear that this time of year with property tax
New
statements
appraisals,
going out,
yeah.
the new appraisals going out, my taxes are going up, the schools should be flush with money. And frankly, those dollars don't stay local.
Yeah.
Over the last 10 years, that number is $14 billion that the state hasn't had to send to local schools because of rising property values across the state. So if they have a certain amount of money that's budgeted to send to schools, and then the property values mean they can send less, they can sweep that money to other sections of the budget.
Yeah.
And frankly, the other sections of the budget may need it, but not necessarily on the backs of local property taxpayers.
There was a really compelling graphic I found, and I didn't know you were going to be a guest on the show, or no one tells me anything,
Right.
but otherwise would have found it. But it was really, when you saw when the state of Texas stopped kind of meeting their commitment for schools, you saw like the funding was still met, and as their funding went down, property tax values went
Right,
up, and
right.
you can see and everyone likes to point fingers at at the local officials in this case, but it really is. This is a state issue, and they really got to pick up the slack.
We all have it together. And the other part to that about state funding, 82% of our budget in Denton ISD goes back into its people.
Mm-hmm.
Our teachers, bus drivers, nurses, counselors, librarians, custodians, cafeteria workers, those people. And so of our $265 million budget, 82% of that is in salaries. Those dollars go right back into this local community. They go to our restaurants. They go to our car dealerships. They go to our banks. And so it's a huge economic engine when you think about it. So yes, our property taxes are what they are. At the same time, those dollars get recirculated into the local community. And we have businesses here that may not be here if you didn't have 4,000 district employees that are on salary that visit those cleaners or those banks or those kinds of things. And so not to mention the commitment and the reason why they do what they do for our students, right?
Yeah.
So it's a big issue across the state. Frankly, we live in a great place here in Denton where we're growing in students and growing in property values that allow us to keep up. If you're in a district that's not growing in students or growing in property values, it's going to become increasingly difficult. And may even have some forced consolidation come from that.
Right.
So we'll see.
Well, I think y'all are doing just a great job. I've got
Thank
two
you.
kids in public school, and I'm so grateful. Like literally every teacher they've had, I'm like, you're my favorite. Like they're all great.
Well,
Yeah.
we have great people and we have great folks that support what we do and what goes on. And it's like with everything else. We can always get better in everything that we do. We need to be better tomorrow than we are today, and continuously try to improve at that. But that doesn't mean we have to throw stones at each other to make that happen.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Well
That's right.
said.
Dr.
Yeah.
Wilson, thank you so much for
Thank
stopping
you.
by. See what happens when you're downtown Denton.
Hey, man, I'm just walking by the window. What's going on here?
Come here.
What are you doing? Get in the window.
There's
Awesome.
pizza and wine, so yeah, that's great. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so
guys.
much.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks
so
for
much.
stopping
Thank
by.
you.
Yeah, congratulations.
You guys got all
That's
kinds of good
great.
stuff going here.
Yeah, I promise it's not moonshine, it's water. I promise.
That's all.
Yeah.
That's
Thanks.
Take care.
great. Good job, Mason, Jordan.
That's awesome.
So, Glenn, when are we going to start seeing more results coming in? It's been 45 minutes since polls have closed.
Well, we have no results, but I'm giving we've got a call in from Chris Watts coming on
Hey.
real quick.
All right.
Kevin, if you want to hand me that microphone right there, I've got Kevin running around like a crazy man
Yeah,
right
I should
now.
give you my Fitbit so I can get all my steps in.
So-
Just think back
I
and
laid
forth.
mulch today, so I got plenty of steps in.
So we're super high tech here, so this is how we're going to do the call in. I've got the microphone sitting next to the phone.
Is it going to be speakerphone? Is that
It's
how that
it's
works?
going to be on speakerphone. You'll be able to hear
All
it.
right.
I'm giving Chris a couple of minutes to kind of get settled, but we're going to give Chris a call.
Okay, great.
Mayor Watts.
The mayor of Denton is going to call into
Mayor.
Politically Denton
Hey.
tonight.
The mayor of Denton is calling in. So here, let's dial a number and see if this works. Dial the number.
See if this works.
See if
Call
this
a
works.
friend.
Oops, let me unmute.
I feel like
it.
we're on one of those talk shows where you're dialing some random person in.
Yeah. That's about as good as it gets.
Hey,
right there.
Glenn?
Hey, Chris, how are you doing?
Can I give you a call back in about 5 minutes?
Yes, you can.
Okay. All right. You bet. All right.
Yeah, just give us a call back. Bye-bye.
This is how it's done when we don't have no producer.
Hey, Mayor.
That's
Hold on.
well, that's pretty much every time I call Chris. He's just like,
He's the mayor. He's a busy man.
it's like, Glenn, thanks for calling again today. But can you call back in a few minutes?
Yeah.
So Are we going to get Patrick in here to tell us what's going on?
Yeah, give us a minute for that. He's doing some, he's going to crunch some numbers to see what it's going to take to overcome on some of these close races.
Yeah.
Okay, and whenever Chris calls back, I'll wave to everyone, and then we'll get going with him.
That's great. So great hearing from the superintendent.
I didn't even know he was going to be on. You didn't tell me this.
We didn't either. He was just walking by. I caught his eye and said, come on in.
Well, I forgot, actually, we had lunch. We were at the Boy Scouts of America luncheon yesterday.
That was now
BSA, sorry, Scouts of America luncheon as of this week. And I talked to him about coming on, and I completely slipped my mind to mention that to anyone.
Okay.
So, yeah, he was invited. He didn't just wander in here and start talking in a microphone. He was invited. So, could we?
Let me go check on our data guys.
Yeah, do you want the data guys?
Guys. I mean, that's really, they really are. I mean, the candidates, Dr. Wilson, it's great that everyone's here. I really want to see this data because that's where it's at. Like, you want to see what the numbers are. You know?
We still have nothing reporting right now. We have 0%. It's 7:50. The early voting it was posted at 7:00, almost 7:02 on the dot.
Tell us, Glenn, about your voting experience this year. What was that like? When did you vote? What do you think about the paper ballots?
The paper ballots weird me out. It's like, It seems like we should be more advanced than a paper ballot.
No, I legit love the paper ballots.
Why?
Because you can trace it. Because if there's ever a question with the number,
Sure. So
because if there's ever a question, because it's harder for Russians to hack a paper ballot, man, than it is a computer. I love the paper ballots.
Hold on, we got Chris coming in. Hold on, we got Chris.
All right, Chris is coming.
Yeah, hang on. Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Hey, good.
Hey, thanks for calling in. We appreciate it.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Great.
Can you hear us okay?
Yes, I sure can.
All right. So we're sitting here, Kevin Roden, Amber Briggle, and Patrick McLeod. We're sitting here looking at your results. You came in handily with a pretty decisive win here with 72%.
You cleaned up, Chris. Yeah, what do you think of how you feeling?
Well, I feel great, but I think it's everybody. I'm humbled by the confidence and the trust that the voters here in the city have shown. But I really think that we're able to serve another 2 years because of the 4 years we served in the past.
Right.
And the community working together has really made some big strides and really improved things in the city. And I think it's just a collaborative effort with the city council and the citizens to make a difference.
That's great. What are some of your big list items that you want to accomplish in your final 2 years as mayor?
Oh, gosh. I think we want to continue to work on financial accountability to make sure that, the city budget is in line. But as everyone knows, appraisals have come in and they're up in Denton County an average of 20%. So as we work through this budget process, we want to make sure that we use our money efficiently and wisely so that we can minimize any type of impact to our citizens as far as property taxes. I want to continue to encourage good, strong economic development. I want to get City Hall West refurbished so that it becomes another historical building on our square. It's basically a living museum for our city. Continue to improve our partnership with DCTA and provide additional public transportation at efficient costs. So just do what we've been doing. We're not perfect. We got a lot of work to do in a lot of areas, but I think working together, we've shown that we're able to tackle the tough issues and listen to the community and hopefully come out with solutions that really maximize the interests.
Right. So basically just keep on being successful is what you're saying.
Well, hopefully keep doing what we're doing, and if we have a hiccup, we'll deal with it. And, that's what all good organizations do. They take accountability, and you learn from your mistakes, and you do better. Yep.
Mayor, this is Kevin. Have you heard from your opponent, Mr. Drance, yet tonight?
No, I haven't.
Okay, great. So as you are looking out to probably seeing somewhat of a new council, Council Member Gregory is going to be out, and of course, Council Member Begary is gone as well. What do you feel like you can be doing to really get this council working together in a positive direction, that you got some new people coming on?
Well, I think it's just do what we've been doing. I mean, I think the current council works well together, and I think no matter who prevails in those other two races, I think we'll be able to bring them on board and be collaborative with what their issues are and what their goals are for their constituents. And, of course, can meet with them individually just to sort of get them up to speed on some of the issues and some of the background. So I feel confident that we'll be able to do that.
That's great. Chris, thanks so much for calling in. We appreciate you. Thank you for your service. And, we're looking forward to working with you in the future.
Yeah, congratulations, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Well, thank you guys for doing your podcast as well. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good night.
Have fun. Have a drink. Take a nap. It's great.
Bye-bye.
So we do have one of the best
Data
members
nerds.
of the Texas. What did we say on our preview of this? The best data analysis in Texas. And let me go ahead and put your microphone back on. Ladies and gentlemen, we're joined by Mr. Patrick McLeod.
One of the
Patrick, how are
smartest
you?
people I know.
I'm doing
truly.
good. How are y'all?
Patrick,
Good.
you have been on my front porch or back porch most election nights as we're doing this kind of unofficially. Tonight, we're on camera in front of anyone who wants to join us.
Very different.
Very different.
on the World Wide Web, so no
Correct.
pressure. On the
And so coming into tonight, I mean, I know you have some stuff specifically looking at some of these close races, but anything surprised you about early voting turnout or even voting trends coming into this from a data perspective? Anything that's anomalous to 2018?
So one of the first things that I looked at was where early voting numbers were just by precinct compared to 2017, compared to 2016, and then in some cases back to 2015 and 2014. I was surprised that the voting numbers, early voting numbers, were a bit lower than I expected them to be this year. I was in particular interested.
Why were you surprised?
I figured there'd be a little bit more engagement. I don't have a strong empirical reason for that. I just kind of figured they would be. But that didn't turn out to be the case.
Yeah.
I was particularly interested, as I think we all are, in Precinct 4003, which is Robeson Ranch and some areas around there. And early voting was quite a bit of a drop-off compared to last year, but that isn't surprising because last year you had a Robeson resident running for office, and we also had the tax freeze on the ballot.
That's right.
So what does that tell you about Robeson voter interest?
If someone from Robeson isn't running, that it's going to be hard to get votes out there.
Yeah, that's interesting. So one of the things we're looking at is we've got one very close race in terms of just wondering whether there's going to be a runoff. So currently, Fuzzy's looking at just shy of 2% down from the 50% mark that he needs, 50 plus, to avoid that runoff. What does it look like in that race? What does he need coming in on election day in terms of votes in order to pull that off? Is that possible?
It is possible. I think we probably have to make some heroic assumptions about what's going on the ground on election day. I've not taken a tour around to see what the numbers were like at the different polling stations today, but if the numbers today kind of mirror the overall numbers for early voting, it's going to be tough. I think I've looked at 5 precincts with the early voting returns where we have a lot of registered voters, but we had very little participation in terms of early voting. So those are precincts where I would think there's room. There's room to run up some numbers, but as to whether or not that happens, I don't know. It's anybody's guess.
Sure.
It's a real numerical answer.
Right. So he would need coming into here probably a higher voter turnout than what would normally be expected on election day. Plus, he'd have to overperform what he did in early voting in order to do that.
Yes. I think looking at the early voting numbers, it just pretty much any of these precincts, you would have to expect anomalous turnout today for him to get 50% plus one.
You know, in past elections that I did significant analysis on, what I found that I specifically was looking at what changed on election day voting, which was always trending a little bit lower in percentage-wise, meaning the early voting percentage was getting higher each year. which is good. More people are taking advantage of those opportunities. But I used to always find if you could identify a candidate who was kind of your anti-establishment candidate, that they would always have a higher swing on election day voting than that they would have on early day voting. So in this particular race, do we have any guess out of this slate of candidates who would be perceived as the more anti-establishment candidate? My guess is probably Deb, right?
Yeah, that would be my assumption.
And so if that holds true heading into this election, the question is, that's not faring well for Fuzzy's chances of getting across the finish line on this one today.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we did heard, I don't know if you heard this, we had breaking news tonight when we asked, and we were able to interview Jody Vickers-Nance, who got a sizable 11% of this. We asked her, would she throw her support around anyone heading into the runoff? And she was clear that it would be Fuzzy.
She hinted. She wasn't clear.
Well, she eventually said.
In a clear way, she had
as clear as she could get. So, what about looking at, so obviously the mayor's race, Patrick, 72%, there's no overcoming that.
Right.
The Paul Meltzer, Frank Dudowitz race, 53%, 41%, that's a pretty big spread.
Yeah.
Is that overcomable in election day voting?
You know, it could be overcomable, but now we're starting to talk about exceedingly high degrees of uncertainty.
Yeah.
So if I think by the same properties that where you would say it's probably improbable that Fuzzy is going to be able to get over 50 based on what early voting has looked like and what that's likely going to look like on election day. By that same property, I would say it's highly unlikely that Paul's going to fall below 50%.
Right, and I think Frank was the favorite in Robeson, and I know Robeson really likes to vote early. The Argyle Town Hall is like, a minute from where they live, whereas if you have to vote on election day, you have to drive, it's almost a half an hour up to North Lakes. And some people just like that tradition. I know, Kevin, you like that tradition of voting on election day, but I just don't think the turnout's going to be there coming from Robeson on election day for kind of the Robeson favored
They
candidate.
now have an election day site out at the fire station. I think it's 7.
Oh, they do. That does make. That's what you were talking about, Glenn, with the 2.
A bit of a change, which is just an unknown as to what that's going to determine.
Well, I guess I'm glad that they have a polling site that's closer, but that could make a difference then, couldn't it?
So what do we make? And this is just I'm asking a political scientist data guy. So we've got Brian Manelis, who showed his head once in this election, and no one could get a hold of him. He's got 274 votes.
Who are those people?
What does that mean? Who's voting? Are those voters that didn't know any better, or are those protest votes? How do we understand that?
13 of those votes were in Robeson Ranch. 13 people in Robeson Ranch voted for this.
But Robeson does their homework. Like, surely they should have known.
Exactly.
Is there a political science answer to that?
People accidentally voted.
We need to do exit polling on Brian Manelis. What's going on?
It's a paper ballot. You can't push the wrong button. So I don't. How?
I think there are kind of experience tells me that there are some voters who go into the booth on election day thinking that they know exactly who they're going to vote for, and between handing someone their driver's license or other identification and actually going into the booth and voting, they kind of forget.
Yeah.
And they're like,
they get stage fright.
I think it was that guy, or I think it was that person.
Yeah, Brian sounds nice.
Yeah. You're right.
And there's people who take friends or family members or spouses to the polls, and in the car on the way there, they're trying to give them the rundown of who to vote for. So there can be confusion as people are kind of for the first time seeing these names.
That's literally what the League of Women Voters Voters Guide is for, though.
Yeah.
Like, just do your homework. It's all online.
It doesn't take that
Well, I saw the League Voters Guide in a lot of places this year.
That's
saw it all over social media, and I was really happy to see that.
Vote411.org is another great place to go, too. Absolutely.
So we're going to be excited to, we know you probably want to go back and crunch some more stuff.
We've got more numbers to work with.
Good. So go back and do that. And certainly we're all on hold for election day voting results to come out. And we're not sure exactly when those will come out. But we'll be coming back to you, and I know Jesse's in the house as well.
Yes.
So thank you for coming on and sharing this with us.
Thank you all for having me.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah.
Bye.
Is he coming back? Do we get to talk to Patrick
Absolutely.
again? Yay,
Yeah,
Patrick.
Patrick will come back.
Bring me some
Patrick
red
will come
wine the
back.
next time you come back, okay?
Red wine.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Well, I think everyone else is with us right now as far as, we have nothing else coming in. It's been an hour since early voting. We're just kind of waiting for the first, really what I think we're going to see is like the first big block of day of voting come in, maybe missing a couple of precincts here and there. But the next release, we should know exactly where we're going to lie on, even the runoff. Is there going to be a runoff on Place 5? And I think that's the big question in everyone's minds right now is there going to be a runoff in Place 5? Will that happen? Can Fuzzy overcome Deb in the day of voting? So
that's what
we're waiting for.
I don't know.
Right
now. As I mentioned, I think Kevin, you were out of the room, but last time, at large, and it was between Greg Johnson and Sarah Bagari. Sarah made a surge in the on the final day of voting. It was the early voting results. It was kind of close and
exactly.
But then she pulled it out at the end, and so you don't. I don't know. Oh, red wine! How did you know? Thank you so much.
So we are being joined here for some more response and reaction to the Denton ISD bond proposition. Jeff Williams, you were the co-chair of the bond this year.
Lauren Bacchus.
73%. Congratulations.
Thanks. We're really excited
about that. What's your reaction?
Feel great. Excited. Glad the voters agreed with us that we had a lot of needs and a lot of things in our district we wanted to take care of. And so we're real excited. Pleased with the vote.
Yeah. And so what happens now? People know that this is a huge price ticket. Obviously, it's not something that we just go out and we just take all this money in and start building buildings tomorrow. But when will we start seeing things done? How does that process work for people who voted for this or didn't vote for it but want to follow it out?
Yeah, it won't be tomorrow, obviously. But I think within the next couple of months, we'll see the board putting priorities together, deciding these things are going to be first. And then obviously they'll do the first sale of the bonds, whatever amount they decide to do. It won't be the whole $750 million. They'll come up with a first package and get going with it. I anticipate that high school is probably going to be top of that list. Yeah. But again, that's the district and the board especially will make those decisions.
Now, last time when we talked to you here on this podcast, there hadn't been any organized opposition to this. And now there was within just a couple weeks ago.
Just kind of started right before the end.
Yeah. And so
I got a postcard even.
Oh, you did?
Did you get a postcard?
I didn't.
I have previously voted in a Republican primary.
Okay.
I may not lean that way in the generals, but I wonder if I was on their mailing list. But I did. I got a postcard. Yeah.
That's the first I've heard of any mailing.
I did. I got a post. I should have brought it. I threw it away right away. I'm not sorry to say that.
So given you were kind of a part on the ground talking with people, I know you did a lot of speeches and whatnot. Are these results surprising to you? Or do you feel like this is kind of what you expected?
Not at all. It's definitely what we expected. Even with, I think the opposition, a lot of that just brought out good conversation.
Yeah.
It gave us the opportunity to explain where we were coming from and why we felt like this was necessary. And most of it had to do with debt. Do we really want to go into
that was a big concern I had heard from the opposition.
And there was some misinformation out there. Several times I saw that the school already has $1.4 billion in debt. Well, that wasn't accurate. Yeah. We were somewhere in the $700 million debt. Now, that's a lot, obviously, but not near as much as was being put out there. And so we focused on the positive. Hey, here's what we think. And if we did see an error, obviously we'd try to answer that and correct that. But it was a good conversation and gave us the opportunity to share our reasoning and what we felt was best. And
so what was that process like when how does one decide that these dollars need to get spent here? Or how can you walk me through the whole process from the time that we decided this was an issue to today?
It started back in September of last year. And that's when 57 citizens came together and began to look at all the needs of the district. Of course, the district helped us with some of that. They showed us, hey, here's what we see the needs are. But we broke up into different committees: secondary schools, elementary schools, growth, technology, safety, all those different groups, extracurricular. And they just began to study all the needs. They went to schools and looked at buildings and saw what.
That's a huge district. That's a lot of homework.
Yeah. We've got 30 some odd schools, I guess, right now. And so they visited every one of them, and especially the older ones. Not some of the newer ones. We didn't have to do much at those. But did that, and we met as a group 8 times over that time period. But all those subcommittees were meeting and going and visiting the schools and doing all those things. And so a lot of hours spent doing that by just ordinary citizens, people that care about our district and our kids.
So what was interesting to me is when Dr. Wilson came out, I'm a member of the Denton Noon Rotary Club, and y'all can join us Thursdays at noon, El Chaparral. But Dr. plug for Rotary. Dr. Wilson came and talked about, when the committee was looking at this, they were really looking at the big picture. So they were looking at, Denton High and Calhoun, and how and not just what are the needs of these specific schools, but what do these schools need? And so talking about moving Denton High to a different location and then converting Denton High into Calhoun, and then talking about what the future of Calhoun would be. I thought that whole conversation that the committee was having just sounds so fascinating, and it's refreshing to hear that they weren't just looking at a piecemeal, but really the big picture for the whole district.
Sure,
so,
absolutely. That the whole equity issue was huge with us. That we've got Braswell, we've got Rodriguez Middle School, and those schools are wonderful, up to date, all the latest technology, and just big hallways and collaborative spaces, and then you walk down the hallways of Strickland Middle School, and it was built, I don't know, in the 1950s or 60s, I guess, and it's just there's classrooms in there that have one plug in the classroom. Now imagine having a room at your house that had one plug in, and with all the technology and all the things And so, it didn't take long for us to realize that, hey, we needed to have all the kids in our district, 186 square miles of district, have the same opportunities for education.
Yeah.
And, our teachers are all great. The teachers at Strickland Middle School are great.
Yeah.
But they need to have those tools. And it's just, it was an equity issue.
Yeah.
And that's why vast majority of this bond dealt with that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Mr. Williams.
Yeah, thank you.
And
congratulations for
I know there's an event just down the street from here. So
I'm going to go check it out.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
Thanks for your service to our city.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Congratulations. Yeah.
So we've got more results come in. We've got
we
about
do.
19%,
Yay, look at that.
14% results. Precincts reporting now. We've got fuzzy down a couple of points. Everything else
Still
has
in the
pretty much
lead,
stayed
but
the same.
yeah.
Chris Watts still won, obviously.
We have
Paul
to dig into
Meltzer.
those precincts in terms of what they are sometimes.
Let's go to the map and see what the map looks like.
We'll grab our data guys here in a second.
And can someone confirm too? I forgot to ask Dr. Wilson, and he's just so fascinating to listen to. I want to confirm that you don't need a runoff.
That's right. He confirmed that to me outside of here. They only need a majority.
Just a majority.
So when we
That
look
makes it
at
easier.
folks like Barbara Burns, who's obviously she's well above majority, but Janetta Smith as well with 46% coming in. Of course, that's only 14% precincts reporting for election day. That's all they need. There's no runoff in there. So
why is that?
Well, there's folks who just think, especially when you're going to have a lot of people on a ballot, there's strategy to play to force runoffs. Some people have actually just put people in a race to keep somebody who would otherwise win from winning and forcing a runoff, if for another reason to make their life miserable, and to play politics. So you see these kind of, what do you call those, ringers that get kind of thrown in, and they're actually supportive of another candidate, but they're there to take away votes. This avoids that sort of strategy. So it's just may the best man or women win.
So when there is, if the city of Denton has to have a runoff, say for this place 5, does the city pay for that election?
Yes, that is the case.
So is that maybe
right.
maybe perhaps that could be a reason why we don't ask a school
It's up to
district
the
to pay?
policy. Ours is according to our charter.
Yeah.
In the city, so the voters approved that as a charter provision back when the charter was put in place, or back when they put in place that particular provision. So that could be changed. And I imagine there's something similar with the school district.
Elections are so expensive to hold, and when we have so few limited dollars for our schools anyway, I would prefer not to have a runoff. To spend that money elsewhere.
The city decided to add some voting locations today. We were just talking about that. So there's now 2 per council district. The plus side of that is there's more places for people to vote. So when you're looking at someone like in District 3, now you don't have to go across the town for 30 minutes. The negative side of that is I saw council member Hutsmith just tweeted out from out at Pecan Place Elementary School. There was only 44 voters in that new voting locations.
Because they didn't know. They probably were going...
Well, whatever. And those were two
MLK
small
or something,
precincts that had to do that. But the point is that we had to pay probably a significant sum of money to get that done. So it's a little bit of a, do you make it easy for voters? Are you willing to pay the cost of what it takes to do that? So, it's a toss-up.
All the more reason to vote early.
Yeah, I'm going to go back and talk to our data guys now that we start having some precincts coming in so we can get some additional...
Yeah, because I think the main thing right now to look at is where are there votes to be had? Where are the votes out there? What precincts have pockets of people who are obviously probably going to vote? And, maybe we can even predict how they voted based on where they are. If you look at Deb's map, she is doing very favorably north of University.
How do you find this map?
You click on
you click on
the map.
Click to see the map.
It literally says click to see map.
Have another drink, Amber. Right there.
That's what the moonshine does to your brain.
Okay.
Scrambles
so you
eggs.
can see, look at that, and it's like highlighted who's kind of favored.
Right, and when you roll over it, it tells you what precinct you're on.
What's the brown? That's just haven't reported yet?
That's a tie. Right now the brown is like here, 2 votes came out of there, 1 vote for Fuzzy, 1 vote for Deb. So that's a tie. Brown's a tie. Jody's blue. Deb is aquamarine.
I was clicking on the other. Okay, I was looking at the Dedowitz-Meltzer race. Let's click on because this is really is it going to be a runoff for place 5? Where's that at? Where'd it go? I lost it.
Yeah, so Deb, who is...
What happened? I lost it. Okay.
Yeah, so she's from this area, so you're seeing a higher, you're seeing higher votes for her come in
I
north
lost
of
that race. Where did it go?
North of University. So,
I'm gonna have to click
folks, we're joined here by County Commissioner Hugh Coleman.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to the pod.
We're right
Good to see ya.
We're right across the street from your
Mr. Squid.
From one of your offices.
Yes, from one of my many offices.
Thanks, Hugh.
Well, thank you for joining us here. We know that
what a bully.
You're not on the ballot this election.
I am not on the ballot.
And you probably like having evenings when you're not on the ballot.
That's true.
And
a little PTSD.
A little PTSD. But, you live in the city of Denton.
Yes, I do.
You're concerned about both what's going on at the city level and what's going on at the school district level. I know you're an avid supporter of Denton ISD. I see you at a lot of those events, and you got kids in the district.
I have children in the district, and I put an endowment for the Education Foundation.
Yeah.
And it's for Newton Raisin Elementary in Calhoun, so I'm a big believer in public education.
That's great. That's great.
Put my money where my mouth is.
So let's start with, I guess, the school board races and we obviously the bond proposition is passing with flying colors on there. Any thoughts? We normally don't see crowded school board races. In the last few years, it's kind of been somebody's kind of almost, it seems like their shoulder tap to run, and there's not a lot of opposition. They don't have to campaign a lot, but the incumbents had to campaign for the first time in a while. Why do you think there's all of a sudden a lot of interest in running for school board?
I think basically the current political environment has caused people to get opponents. I've always had an opponent most of the time, and if you're outspoken, you get one. But I think what probably it was is that I think in the last term, didn't they have a couple of people who were unopposed, and they didn't even know that there was any elections coming up?
Right.
And so I think people just decided it's time to have a choice.
Yeah.
And that's really good because it sharpens, I think, the edges of the incumbents who had to run. I think as a result of them having to campaign and get out there, they're going to be a lot more attentive to their constituencies.
Yeah. Now we saw in some of these cases, and I don't know, you're more kind of in tune and kind of seeing how politics happen at the county level, and you pay attention to what happens at the state level. In some of these school district races, I saw on campaign finance reports, people are being funded by people out of Dallas and other sorts of stuff. What's happening there? Are people getting maybe groomed for other positions, maybe if they were to get this position that maybe they're going to launch out for state representative? Is that kind of the path people take when they're trying to rise in state politics?
That's a good point. From what I understand, what I've been told is the Democrats have thought it was a good way to get people to launch into partisan races was to try and run for city council or run for school board. And I believe there may be an effort from some of the more rightish areas of the Republican Party to try and get some people in local government, nonpartisan positions, and maybe prime them for running for additional office. I've spoken to Dave Shuck, and he has expressed no interest in any other office to me. And, Dave has 2 children in the district.
They were in our Boy Scout troop that I'm in, and he's generally a good guy. I thought he had genuine intentions. I never met the fellow from Corinth.
Okay.
But when I talked to Dave, he said he supported the bond. So I think that's a good idea to have a good discussion. I'm not sure if it's a good idea to say you have to have children in the district to be on the school board. I think it's probably better to say you had children in the district to be on the school board.
Sure.
There's always the danger of people who have never had children in the district, that they don't have a real good perspective of what's going on in the schools. And then there's always a danger of somebody who does have children in the district while you're on the school board, that they might kind of seek some sort of advantage or something like that. It'd be very awkward to be able to be on the board and have your kids in the school. So there's multifaceted, advantages and problems.
My dad was my superintendent from 7th grade on to when I was graduated from high school.
Oh my
goodness. And I can tell you it's not all benefits.
Yeah.
It's a lot of awkwardness
I believe it.
to that sort of thing. So let's jump into the city races. What's your opinion of kind of what's going on at the state of the city? I remember you coming up for some issues, even coming to city council to give your perspective.
I did.
What's going on? What's going on in the city?
I was concerned when I actually came to speak to city council that we have a misconception through some of our constituents here in the city of Denton that we're a direct democracy and that we should put everything to a vote. We have the better man system where we have a representative democracy, and I elect people to make those hard decisions. If you want to be a politician and skip a hard decision and push it off to the voters, that's a good way to keep yourself elected, but not letting the people know exactly how you feel. And I was concerned about when they were going to do the gas plants, that our council wanted to pass it off to the electorate as opposed to make a decision on where they stood. And I was concerned about that. I think there's a group of people who think if their council is not going to make the decision they want, then they push it off to the electorate. They think that perhaps they have a better chance of being successful. I think, frankly, our city council is kind of taking a turn to the left. I noticed that Mr. What's his name, Meltzer. He's probably going to get on there. I've spoken to him a couple of times. He's from New York City, and you can tell. I think when I went to one function, he spoke about, I think, doing some sort of rent control or basically having an ordinance regarding residential leases. That's going to be a pretty tough sell in Texas. I can see some problems with that. So I think our city council is going to take a leftist turn, and we'll see how that goes. I think once, if you're going to have a lot of stuff that kind of the crazies that have infested city of Denton government, they get what they want, they're not going to be wanting a general vote on the decisions they like.
Right.
Well, let me just say two things, though. First, Paul does live in the historic district, and he's volunteered on damn near every committee in the last couple of years. He's pretty engaged. Secondly, I kind of would like, what do you mean when the crazies get involved in city government? Because as we started, maybe, and you probably weren't here at the start, but when Glenn was talking about people with their hair on fire and freaking out about things happening down at City Hall. My counter to that is, people in the city have legit concerns about air quality, the property taxes that they're paying. Even the people who were opposed to the school bond have some legit concerns. That doesn't make them crazy. That makes them very concerned citizens. So could you define that for me?
Well, let me ask you this. So you've listed the problems. I mean, to me, I think if you have an irrational belief, then and you get on social media and you troll people and, you make a veiled plea to the emotions and stuff like that, I don't think it leads to productive discussion. I don't think having somebody doing a caricature of a duck in a soiled diaper and putting it on the internet leads to positive discussion.
Or a rat.
I did see a rat, but that was some pretty good artistry, I will say.
And, those are some of the people who put that stuff out there, and I just don't think that, it's kind of to the point where, it's frankly both sides have engaged in that. I think it'd be great to have people get up there and say, look, this is what I believe, and I think these are the reasons for what I think we should do, and try and not vilify the other side. But like air quality in Denton, we could probably talk about that forever. Mm-hmm. But frankly, we live in a bowl, and there's very hard to do stuff about air quality in the city of Denton, in Dallas. We get a lot of prevailing pollution from communities outside of here. We can do stuff locally to improve it, but it's not going to do it to a point where I think it's going to make much of an effect. That doesn't mean we don't want to be kind to the environment and good stewards of the environment, but you've got to be able to complain about stuff that you can actually affect change on.
So
in my opinion.
Did you hear things like that driving people to the voter booth this time, or did you hear more people were going to the voter booth based on just issues like we need better roads, we need better sidewalks? Or did you see a drop-off in kind of the appeal to the emotions in this election?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. There was a lot of real, I thought, good meaty issues and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And, of course, you got a lot of people who are running who don't realize that, particularly for a city council, you've got a city manager who's your executive officer, and the city council is supposed to be setting policy. Denton's a big town, but like when I was a city attorney for a while, you'd always want to have people who say, look, if you vote for me, I'll make sure that this park is built. Well, they generally don't realize that when they're campaigning, you've got to get the other people in the council to agree with you with those goals.
Right.
And as a member of city council, you're supposed to work through the city manager, and you don't get to micromanage which pothole is filled at one time.
Right. That's
right, Kevin?
Yeah,
when you were on city council.
That's a discussion that me and Kevin had a lot, is that people campaign not understanding the premise of you don't have executive power when you get to this seat. You don't hire and fire people except the city attorney and the city manager. You don't have any control over literally anything but what you communicate to the city manager. And people really campaign with either a misunderstanding or an overstatement of that power when you get into that seat. I thought
that'll get you votes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's if you get out there and say you vote for me, I'm going to fix those roads. I'm going to fix Hickory. I'm going to fix Oak. I'm going to get out there and, fill them myself.
And you start looking like, wait, no, but that's a TxDOT road, so actually I can't.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and so that's kind of the problem. And
let me ask you a question, because I know your particular slice that you represent of Denton County extends far out, even up to
both
northern
corners.
Frisco and even kind of north of here as well. I was struck when I saw a video come out from the mayor of the city of Frisco, in which they just announced a pretty significant partnership with University of North Texas to get a new spot there, in which I looked at that and thought, man, they get the partnership between what a university can mean to economic development in a city like Frisco. They gave them, I think, 100 acres of land upon which to build. You live in Denton. You've seen some of the fights we have, and we fight with our university over like Sack and Save being torn down, right? That's our economic development discussions in our city.
Or sidewalks on the square.
Right, or sidewalks on the. So what is it? What is Denton missing and this is your perspective in terms of us taking advantage of the economic boom that other communities are seeing around us that we're yet to be able to take advantage of?
Well, I'll tell you this. I represent the city of Frisco for Denton County, and they are a phenomenal organization. George Pierford, their city manager, is just fantastic, and he understands government. He knows how to bring people together, not be divisive. It is so nice to be able to represent a city like that, because they really don't bother. They really don't get upset when you have companies moving in who make money.
Right.
They would never,
like Amazon per se. Like
yes. They're going to have a partnership with the PGA.
Yeah.
And I'm going to help commit some funds to expand Teal all the way up to 380 to bring that into Denton County. I just think, with the city of Denton, we're not really predisposed to that kind of economic development. And it's really tough.
Right.
That people get upset if people make money in Denton. They think there's got to be something crooked. There's got to be something that's, wrong. I don't think you would ever find anybody in Frisco showing up with a child and a stuffed pig and stuff like that, and naming the pig after the city manager, George, or something like that. We just don't. They are all pro getting business done, providing quality of life issues. They understand that if you have a huge tax base, that you pay less taxes, and that you're able to improve the quality of life for the people who live in that city, and bringing businesses helps do that.
Right.
I guess I missed that episode. I didn't know the stuffed pig
I was
thing.
sitting up there while that was happening.
Yes. That episode.
Well, Commissioner Coleman, it's certainly, we need to have you come back on for a full slate of Politically Denton.
But Denton's a great place to live here. It's a great place to live. I've lived here for 20 years. My kids, they go to the public schools. We've been at Calhoun. We've been at Newton Razor. We're going to Denton High. It's a great place to raise a family.
Your wife is on the board of trustees for Texas Women's University.
She's a regent for TWU.
Yes.
Yes, and that's a wonderful thing. It's great. She's I call her a double pioneer woman.
Yeah.
Because she got both her degrees there. And, TWU is just a fantastic university. It's provided tremendous amounts of opportunity. It's a great college for women, for everybody. She was the first person in her family to go to college, and she's been extremely successful. She loves that university, and she was just really excited to be able to represent Denton. And, it's great because TWU is going to have a regent who's going to be attending all the events.
Yeah.
I got to go to dinner at the chancellor's house.
That's great.
And she was the person. All I had to do, I was her date instead of the other way. That's awesome. I love that, man. That's great.
And a little known fact about Commissioner Coleman, he is a bike lane advocate.
Yeah, can I just, yes, thank you. Because I wanted to say, so Commissioner Coleman, I don't agree with you on most things, but that's
a great open.
But I think this is I'm so grateful for your support of bike lanes. I remember it was the very first year that the bike plan had gotten approved, and City Council was looking at the budget. Right, this is why we get involved at the local level. Where do I want my tax dollars to be spent? Right. And they had way under budgeted for the bike plan because it had I think it had at that point yet to be approved, but the budget was going to follow that anyway. And I lobbied City Council. Kevin, were you on council at that point? I can't recall.
When it passed, yeah.
Yeah, well, anyway, but I had lobbied City Council. I'm like, you guys are not funding the bike lanes to the degree that they need to be funded for this first year. And you and Commissioner Eads had both promised matching funds if the city were to put in $100,000, I think, that year. And you had each promised $50,000, I think, from your own
discretionary.
Yeah. And I was so incredibly grateful for that the county, could speak to the city like, we got your back on this. This is important, and I'm very, very grateful to you for your advocacy on that issue, and just to jumpstart the bike lanes. That was fantastic. I did bring you a Bike Denton T-shirt. I don't know if you got it. It was years and years ago. I stopped by your office.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I typically on Tuesdays and Thursdays I try to meet with constituents, good or bad. Over here at the coffee shop now that the Jupiter House is closed.
Yeah.
I'm going over here to Upper Park, and I talk to people whether or not they want to. Talk about stuff I hear, but I always tell them what's going on. I like talking about policy, whether we agree or not. But I think that's what the thing is, you got to be, as an elected official, is be accessible.
Yeah.
And I've really tried to do that. The one thing that people probably don't know is the person who was responsible for getting that money for the city of Denton was Mayor Burrows.
Yeah.
Because he came by to talk to me and asked me if I would help fund the bike lanes because they were having problems with it. And I said, sure, not a problem. But the problem is I only represent about half the city of Denton. So I said, look, I'll talk to Andy Eads and see if he will match me dollar for dollar out of our discretionary account. And so when I spoke to Andy said, yeah, I'll do it. It'll be great for the city. And then as a result of Mark Burrows' advocacy on the city council and as mayor, we were able to get those funds for the city of Denton. And, regardless of whether you like Mark, I know Neil Durant's ran against him. He did a good job for the city. I really think he did. Yeah. And people... they don't realize how much heart and his soul he put into it and what he really did to effectuate a lot of stuff. The way he was, I thought, pretty magnanimous and open-minded and tried to give everybody a voice, particularly during some really difficult positions regarding the fracking and people claiming there's possible inverse condemnation of their mineral rights. That was a tough time to be on council.
Yeah.
Weren't you on there, Kevin?
That's right, yeah.
And I think Mark really did a good job of kind of pushing y'all through that. I think Chris is doing a good job. I think it's going to be tough because I think we're having a lot more of our council politicized. It's going to be interesting to see how it pushes out with the elections tonight. Who's winning?
So obviously Mayor Watts has
Yeah.
won his race with 73% of the votes. Paul Meltzer, we're looking at about 31% precincts reporting on election day, is up, likely going to be able to maintain that lead throughout the rest of the night. It looks like Aaron's numbers are slightly down, so it looks like we're probably going into a runoff between those two.
Okay.
So a lot of close calls, especially looking at place 5. But
okay. Well, I've talked to Aaron. He seems pretty pro-business, and I think he's in the community as a banker. He has a pretty good feel. Paul, he's kind of a community activist. I think he's retired, right? Works with the Thin Line Festival, and so he'll have a lot of time to spend with the city. He'll probably want to pay attention to a lot of social issues, I bet. It's always good to have different people with different voices on council. I hope they just kind of don't dominate certain things and, they keep an eye on the bottom line.
Right.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Coleman, for stopping by.
Thank you so
All right,
much.
see you guys.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, so it looks like Fuzzy's dropped a little bit in the percentage. Deb's gained a little bit of footing, but it probably looks like this is probably going to head to a runoff. Now, it was only 31% of precincts reporting.
Yeah, the more precincts that report on that one, and the lower Fuzzy gets, the more likely it is that that's going to be a runoff. I mean, looking at the map, I bet Patrick is in there crunching away on some stuff to see what's available.
How many votes did Deb get when she ran against Dalton 2 years ago?
That's a good question.
Hey, data nerds, can you find that number? How many votes did Deb get 2 years ago?
Look that up. I believe
I
believe she beat herself this time. I think she was at about 1,700.
That was a very close race. I think Dalton just kind of squeaked it out at the end to come up like a little more than 50%.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So I'm kind of curious, and I wonder too. I mean, well, now I guess the numbers have been down. I'm just trying to think, like, are more people engaged now that we've had so many rallies on the square and so much voter registration? But I think the numbers have been a little bit down.
Right. You would think that people would get engaged in the local sides of politics, but like the rallies on the squares, I always see that as that's a national conversation issue, and we haven't seen much crossover between national issues and city issues. It's so far what I can see is that it's kind of staying the same in the city issue. Like, people who care about city elections are the same people who cared about them a year ago, maybe even less, because we don't have the tax freeze now. We don't have a person from Ropes and Ranch running. There's a little less interest across the board, but we haven't seen like a blue wave as far as the city goes at all.
No, I mean, sure. I mean, and you look at the Neil Durant's, right? He's a proud Democrat, and I think he was probably counting on that blue wave to kind of carry him into a victory tonight, and that didn't happen because really, when you get down to it, local government isn't blue or red. Oh, and look, we got some
more results coming in
too. Something just refreshed on my screen. No, but I think there are. I mean, even look at like so you say there's a lot of national stuff that doesn't maybe necessarily play out at the local level, and I think I may disagree with you on that. Like, thinking about like the Paris Climate Accord, right? So the U.S. is pulling out of that. Right, and we're really counting on like local governments to kind of pick up the slack.
You could make the argument that it actually does cross over, but does that energize people to vote? What we're seeing tonight is no.
Yeah.
So Fuzzy's fallen again. He's on 46.25% versus Deb 37.92.
Yep.
And here we have Dalton.
Hey, Dalton.
How are you doing?
Hi, Amber.
How are you?
Still councilman to you guys.
Yeah. Thank you so much for dropping by.
Yeah, thank you for your service to the city.
How does it feel tonight on election night to know that you're going to wake up tomorrow and you have just a couple more weeks on council and you get to finally retire?
Do you have senioritis?
I don't have senioritis. Oh, good night.
See, it's like we're on Good Morning America. Can we get into these people out there? Where's your signs? It's like, we love Glenn.
There we go. That's amazing.
Strike a pose. Work it. So Dalton, how you feeling? You're stepping down.
My wife asked me today, as we were driving over to the community market, she said, "Are you regretting not running?" And I said, "Fortunately, not at all. Not at all."
Good.
Because I was afraid I might.
Yeah.
I was afraid that I would be a little bit nervous about it. Like the old horse that. Here's the horses getting in the lineup, and you're kind of saying, "Oh, I think I want to do that too." No, in fact, I've been grinning a lot during the election season as I've been pursuing my hobbies and playing with my grandchildren. That I'm doing that, and not having to deal with a number of forums and all of the other things.
Forums, there's so many.
There are a lot.
So Dalton, you took the, I'll say, unusual step, and I was frankly surprised because you've been you kind of would stay out of things during most elections, and I saw a letter to the editor come out last week in which you formally endorsed Fuzzy Newquist for replacing you on the place 5 seat.
That's correct.
What led to that decision?
Well,
and was that hard for you to do?
It was not hard. Well, to the extent that I know all of those people that are running for that race,
right?
And I think they're good human beings, and I admire and appreciate the fact that they're willing to serve, and that they're willing to put themselves out to go through everything you have to go through to run for office. Mm-hmm. It can be grueling. Yeah. So I appreciate that. And I have served on some committees with Jody, and enjoyed her and appreciate her.
She's great.
And value her. To me, in that race, my read was, and it was accurate, that the race was going to be between Fuzzy and Deb. Mm-hmm. And given that choice, I felt like that Fuzzy was a better choice. I've heard a lot from Deb 2 years ago when she was challenging me, and I've had several conversations with Fuzzy and heard his take on things and how he approaches things. And while he probably leans a little bit more right in his political philosophy than I do, what I was convinced of in talking to him is that he's going to listen to all of the facts, and he's going to make a decision about what's best for the city, mm-hmm. and not necessarily what nicely aligns with his political philosophy. Mm-hmm. That he's not going to ignore factual information if it's not convenient for him. So that's why I did that. I also wrote a letter in support of Janetta Smith running for re-election to the school board. I've known Janetta for years, and in fact, when I was a principal at Lee Elementary, she was my assistant principal for a couple of years.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
And Janetta, the same way she served on with me, was the way that she serves on the school board. Her first thing is always, what is this going to do for our kids? Mm-hmm. What is it going to do for our teachers?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, those are the first two questions that you want any school board member to be asking.
Now, you and I both always admired the school board because of their ability to stay out of the limelight and stay out of the news by virtue of the fact that there wasn't a lot of controversy going on down in the boardroom as they were making decisions. We now see a race, in this case, that was much more contentious, much more crowded. What do you make of that as somebody who obviously you've been committed to the school district for many, many years? What does this tell you, that these sorts of changes are happening, that more people are getting involved? Do you see that as a positive sign?
The fact that people are interested in serving on the school board is always a good sign. The way some of the races went, some of the subterfuge that happened is concerning to me, especially when you have people running for the school board who are endorsed by the Empower Texas group, that are basically folks that are antagonistic towards public education in the state of Texas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that concerns you to see
that concerns me that you have folks that are running for the school board with that attitude, and that are in some cases not really owning up to it.
Well, and we know that Empower Texans came out decidedly against the bond proposition.
Yeah.
And they got beat 75 to 25% in their efforts.
And Empower Texans came out in the race for the Republican primary for state representative.
Oh, yeah.
They came out opposing Representative Lynn Stuckey, and he won in a landslide also.
Yeah, thank goodness, yeah.
So what pleases me about the whole thing is that while there are people that are interested, it makes me happy that the voters in Denton are not inclined to jump on board with fringe elements of either wing of whether it's fringe to the left or fringe to the right.
It does seem to me that the voters are waking up to this Empower Texans kind of threat too. I mean, I will say, I'm going to lay it out there, a threat. I mean, there's snakes in the grass, like waiting to.
Well, there's a sitting city council member who was endorsed by them 2 years ago, and I brought it up because I thought it was concerning then, and a lot of folks
we didn't know.
They got support from the left.
You were the
from the
paranoid
left, and I was the person that was calling people names.
Yeah.
And then last year, Duff was also endorsed by Empower Texans, and
he's come out strongly against.
Yeah, that's since turned around.
Yeah. Well,
so I've got to ask you, Dalton, and I know we've got some data folks who are going to come on and kind of look at some of the latest analysis, but as you're leaving off council, obviously somebody who's been committed to this city, and you have a lot of issues that you're concerned about. What worries you?
Wait, are you talking about personal issues that I'm worried about? And I do have some that I'm worried about.
We'll get into
that my
those
wife's
later.
worried about also.
What are you concerned about that you want to make sure stays front and center even when you're not there to advocate for them?
There are a couple of different areas. Some that I feel like have more momentum than others. The fact that we have continued, even though the federal government has backed off on funding for some of our support for our more at-risk citizens, our local government has continued to step up and try to fill some of that gap. And I hope that continues. And I think that our mayor, who now has 2 more years, will be leading that charge also because of his concern and the leadership that he's shown regarding the homeless issue and how to address that, and regarding the issues with mental health issues. So I think that those are important.
Yeah.
The fact that we have stepped up and we've added money to our funds that go to interfaith ministries to help folks that are struggling with payments of their utility bills. And they could get high this summer because we're going to have some spikes in rates. We're not going to have that kind of spike in Denton because we have been able to set up with our 100% renewable plan a way to kind of balance out and not have some of those big hits. But they are the statewide power grid is saying we're going to have some trouble this summer. Of course, the other issue, one of the small issues, nobody cares about this because nobody at IOOF Cemetery votes and nobody at the Oakwood Cemetery votes. But we
Not
made
yet.
not yet. They could, but we made some great strides at repairing some of the damage that's happened over time, just due to neglect.
Are you a future resident?
I'll be a future resident somewhere.
Is this a conflict of interest, perhaps?
No.
Yeah.
So I went out there the other day and I took some more photos and sent some notes to our city manager and the mayor saying, in the next budget cycle, don't think that you have it all done yet. Of course, the final thing is biking and pedestrian issues.
Are we going to get a new bike coordinator?
They have interviews set up, I think, for next week.
Okay.
And they had checked in and they said that they had several candidates that are coming in. And that's good. And we're going to be, we're adding some folks in on the engineering side that are more focused on bike and pedestrian issues. So, and we're continuing to, we have plans for some more road diets to take some of our 4-lane roads that are, don't have the traffic, the automobile traffic that warrants that many lanes, and take them down to 2 lanes with bike lanes.
You know, I've got to say, and you've only got a couple more weeks to do anything, but walking around Jazz Fest, which I disagree with the paper completely about their analysis of parking. I think the city did a great job of getting people to and from that. And one thing that I loved, as you went down Bell Avenue, the city created a road diet in order to help walkers. So they blocked off some of those lanes and then had police officers help cross. On McKinney Street, they created a road diet around that mid-block crossing by blocking off 2 lanes.
Right.
And then on Oakland, inadvertently there was a road diet because people were parked in that right turn lane right as you're getting towards Withers. But it was great for pedestrians and cyclists. And it made me think, those are great candidates for road diet, and we saw it in one of the busiest days of the year around there.
And we also saw not only that going on, but we saw over 1,700 people do remote parking at the Med Park parking lot and ride the bus in.
Yeah.
And I was at City Hall a couple of times watching bands play, or at one point playing myself, but I saw the bus coming up and the bus was full. I mean, people just loading off the bus. And so the fact that we have that available, that DCTA, a partner agency with the city that's willing to help support events like that, is a great thing. And I think more people are going to catch on to that and realize I have an alternative that's really going to be very comfortable and very easy to do.
Great.
So I want to ask about your greatest hits. You've been on council for 100 years.
9.
100 years.
It just felt like 100. Wow.
What are some of your greatest hits? What are some of the things that you're just the proudest of? I mean, I have a list. I would like to hear your list before I tell you my list of things I'm grateful for you for.
I didn't bring it with me. I got interviewed the other day, and I thought I should have it, but I don't have it with me. I think the work with bikes and pedestrians, because we've added a lot of sidewalks too. Absolutely. Expanding parks, addressing the needs of the cemeteries, because we own those cemeteries, and it was interesting. We discovered that when we took over the cemetery, the IOOF cemetery, that the city council at that time, I think this was in the 30s, said that they were going to dedicate 2 cents of the tax revenue that each person, of the property tax revenue, to go to the cemetery. That hasn't been happening. So I think those kinds of things. By the way, I have a disappointment too.
Oh, yeah. Tell me.
When I got on the council, I thought that my biggest thing I could help with was getting the funding to go to expand and get permanent facilities at the Clear Creek Natural Heritage Center. But 2009 was not a great year in terms of the national economy, and we were suffering for several years thereafter. And then when I got on council, I realized that the roads were in such terrible shape. And it was sort of like... You hadn't noticed
that before?
Well, I noticed from a different perspective that I'm now responsible. And then studying the issue and realizing how the budget, the city budget for road maintenance had been declining in terms of its percentage of the overall budget. I didn't feel like that I could legitimately spend a lot of time and energy and try to divert money to the Natural Heritage Center, the Nature Center out there at the end of Collins Road and Hartley Field Road. Didn't feel like I could do that. But I feel very good about what we were able to do with getting a lot more money going for road maintenance, and then 2 bond elections passed. The other thing that I feel really good about is that we now are going to have ambulance units at every single fire station. And I think that's a real accomplishment.
Absolutely.
If you look at the call reports for the fire department, about 80% of them are for medic events. So having an ambulance at every station now is great, because every firefighter is an EMT trained person, and every EMT is a firefighter. But to have, and the fire engines have a lot of medical supplies on them. But if you need to transport somebody, you need to have the ambulance. And so now that we're getting building new fire stations that are able to accommodate those medic units, we're going to be able to serve the citizens better. So that's another area where I feel real good.
I'm very grateful for your hard work on the bike lanes, especially. I moved here from the Netherlands, and prior to that, I lived in Boulder. So I've seen how cities and like entire countries can do it right when it comes to bike lanes. And I moved to Denton, and I'm like, holy hell, how am I supposed to get anywhere without driving my car? Like, I can't even cross the damn street. Like, this is not okay. And the first time I met
try being old.
Well, and try doing it with kids.
Yeah.
You know, even just pushing a stroller down the street can be, there's a dumpster in the way, the sidewalk's uneven, if there's a sidewalk at all. So I'm really grateful to you for your work on that. I know you're supportive of the Denton Community Market because that started when you were on council. I was actually a vendor at the very first community market, and now you look. I've got two locations, 10 massage therapists. You know, like it started at the community market, and the food trucks. I think too. I mean, I know you've done a lot more than that, but those are kind of like my top three. Sort of, I'm very grateful to you for your work on those issues.
Well, and the thing with the community market, the food trucks, and by the way, with the shared workspace for entrepreneurial startups and tech startups at Stoke, those are all part of a bigger comprehensive idea of what economic development ought to be about, rather than just being about the incentives for big companies like Peterbilt and Tetra Pak. By the way, I think those are great. I think that we need Peterbilt and Tetra Pak, and they have contributed greatly to our community. But you can't just go in that one direction. You need to have small.
Yeah, absolutely. And small businesses are really, we produce like 90% of the jobs in this country. Like, and tech jobs especially are very high paying. So, yeah, that's a great.
So how does this work for you if there is a runoff? Are you're still on council until...
I stay on until, and there would be a runoff in 6 weeks.
So are you angry about that?
Tom's like, when I go home.
Well, my wife had said we were looking at planning a trip in about 2 weeks, and I said maybe not. With a 4-way race, it would be hard for anyone to get it. I was in a 5-way race last time, and I was sure I was going to be in a runoff. And the fact that I squeezed by without a runoff was just miraculous, and I was grateful because I was tired of campaigning after that. So I'll be on until that is settled.
Dalton, speaking as one of your constituents, I can assure you that if you decided after a couple weeks, even if there's still a runoff going on, and you wanted to go take a vacation with your wife, and you missed a couple meetings here at the end of your tenure, no one's going to give a damn.
We're good.
Just
we're
go.
Good. Bye.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
You heard it here.
I appreciate that.
From Politically Denton.
I appreciate that. There are a couple of discussions that are on the horizon that
should still be a part of.
That I would like to. I don't know that I'm going to have much impact in those discussions.
That's right.
Because I think that I'm representing a minority point of view in them. But I'd like for some of my comments to be
on the record.
And maybe to. We have some good folks on council that are willing to listen to all sides, and I think that might help. There's a clear glass.
It's water. I promise it's water. Stop it.
I have a daughter that lives in Kentucky.
I was going to say, you've seen this before.
Because plastic is poison, and I do a lot of canning at home, and so I happen to have.
And so is moonshine. Moonshine's poison too.
Well, it can be.
Moonshine.
Good for you, Amber. Good for you.
We're not judging.
Yes,
we're actually celebrating.
We're not judging.
We're wondering why you're having opportunity to us.
I'm wondering what the pint of scotch is
Councilman Gregory, thank you so much for coming on tonight.
All right. And when do we expect to hear the
I don't know. Where is,
of the final results here?
And how many votes are you expecting to come in
56% have, that's a good question, but 56% have reported so far.
We already had analysis that we think it's going to be a pretty monumental lift for Fuzzy to get past that 50%.
Yeah, I don't
given
think
what we saw. So, always election day turnout is always lower than early voting turnout, and so. And the trends in terms of who's being supported don't switch that wildly. So we don't expect, we'll probably see things here in the next hour come in, but we don't expect things to change that dramatically. But
well, I'll go home and tune in.
Tune in. Tell all your friends and family.
Yeah, I will. I don't. After 9 years on council, you don't have that many friends.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Well, thank you, Councilman Gregory.
You bet.
Yeah, thank you for coming here.
Thanks again for your service to the city.
Thank you. So Kevin's going to go get one of two people.
Who's all out there? I've not left the seat.
Do you want to go check it out? And I'll sit here and talk to myself for a little bit.
No one wants to listen to that, Glenn.
Yeah, that is true. So we're either going to see some more data people walk through the door, or we're going to see we have someone from a campaign possibly hanging out there.
Is Paul out there? I texted him.
I had been texting Paul, and I mean, I guess we could try to call him real quick.
What's he doing? Does he have a watch party downtown? Last time it was at his house.
Yeah, I'm not sure what he's doing, but he's definitely doesn't care about us right now.
Is Deb going to stop by? I know she was having a watch party over at Gary's. I don't know if she's.
Yeah.
There's like literally no parking on the square, so.
Yeah. So let's maybe see if Deb can call in and tell us what.
I'd love to hear her reflections on what her plan is for the likely runoff that's happening. Probably going to happen. I can text her.
Yeah, it looks pretty. Looks like it's going that direction for sure. Like Kevin was saying, it's going to be a pretty monumental lift for Fuzzy to get past the 50% plus one vote.
Yeah.
Just doesn't look like it's going to happen. Chris Watts, though, still winning 71% to 28.9%. 6,800 votes being cast there. And actually, I think this is interesting. There are 8,223 votes cast for for Denton ISD Place 2. And that's one of the things we were talking about. Will we be able to tell if the school board and the school bond program push votes? We're seeing a much higher voter turnout for the bond and the ISD spots, the board trustees, than even the mayor's race. We've got 6,804 votes in on the mayor's race, and for the Proposition 1, we've got 9,200.
Again, keep in mind that Denton ISD encompasses about 14 different jurisdictions.
So it's just a bigger,
it's a much bigger territory.
Braswell isn't even in, as Dr. Wilson said, most of the schools that we've built are not even in the city of Denton.
So the people can vote for Denton ISD that aren't in the city of Denton.
Okay.
By virtue of that. So that these are, I know as somebody's looking at these, that can be confusing because you see the name Denton, but there's not that.
Still though, you look at the Prop A, 9,200 roughly votes, and then you look at the school board, and that's 1,000 votes more than the Janetta Smith, David Shuck, Angela Sid race.
Yeah, so a lot of people came out to vote for the proposition.
For that. Yeah.
And for whatever reason didn't feel confident voting for the board.
That's why you got to vote 411.
So just checking precinct 4003. We've got 30 or 40 more votes for Denton ISD than we have for the mayor's race. So there's 30 or 40 more votes there. And that's just one precinct.
Interesting.
So we are still seeing kind of a higher turnout.
Yeah.
For just the bond, even precinct by precinct. So I think that's really interesting.
All those retired educators living down at Robeson Ranch, knowing what's.
So it looks like we might have someone coming on. We've got the doors opening. Who's it going to be?
Hey, glad to be here.
Yay! There are not nearly enough girls on this show, so I'm super glad you're here.
Exciting evening. Very exciting. Hi, Amber.
Have you had wine? You should have wine.
Glenn, it's good to see you.
Good to see you, Jill. How are you?
She's like, no comment.
I'm fantastic.
I'm so glad
Fuzzy
you're here.
is way in front, and it's very exciting.
He's way in front.
But Kevin, good to see you. Thanks for coming. We'll talk about you.
Thanks for coming,
Kevin is a jerk. I mean, we can just say that, can't we?
Oh my God.
Who does that?
He pays his taxes and works and hangs out with his kids.
He bikes everywhere.
Who does he think he is?
Oh my God, I want to barf right now.
Who does he think he is?
Casting votes on the city council for 6 years. What is that about? So Jill, you're in the hot seat. Jill and Chris. Chris, great to see y'all. Great to see y'all. So Jill, you are Aaron Fuzzy Newquist's treasurer. What does that entail? What have you done as a treasurer for Fuzzy? What does that mean? Because that's on every sign. It says Jill Jesser Treasurer.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah. What exactly does that mean? What's your official capacity?
So it's you're right. It is an official capacity. It's the only person that someone that's running for office is going to have, or that is necessary to have as an official capacity. And I've never done it before. This is my first time I've agreed to be a campaign treasurer.
Did you know how much work it was going to be? Would you have signed up for it if you knew how much work it was going to be?
Well, I'm sure you know I am a lawyer, so I did due diligence before I agreed.
Okay.
No, but I did. I wanted to make sure that if I come... Now, to be honest, I mean, I had offered myself if he needed that months before he ever agreed to run. When he had even talked about perhaps throwing his hat in the ring. And I knew him from our personal relationship and our friendship and our work relationship. And I knew from the get-go that I believed he would be a fantastic candidate and a great person that I would believe in supporting. And it's a big deal to say, I'm putting my name on the line, and it doesn't mean that you agree with every single thing that person has ever done in their entire lives or will do, but it says, this is someone that I know well enough that I'm willing to go out on a limb and say, I would be happy to link myself. I'd be proud to link my name to his name because I know him to be a smart, honest, caring person.
Right.
And that's someone we want on council. And so there are a lot of great people in the race. I appreciate and I do very much like people that are in the race. But I've just, like I said, I have a different relationship with Mr. Newquist that told me from the get-go, I think he'd be fantastic on council and someone that would be very helpful to disseminate information in a different way, I think, than others that have been on council in a while could.
Right.
So that's what it is. So, I mean, your name is next to him, his on everything.
Like literally
and
the website, the yard signs, the mailers.
I know. I suggested a picture of me on his poster, and he didn't go for that, sweetie. I don't understand. Because Chris actually did a photo shoot.
And that is why
we did a photo shoot with our cats. Now, the cats weren't very helpful. But I thought we had a fantastic photo. And we said, if you will run like half our photo and half vote Fuzzy Aaron Newquist, we thought, you know what? I don't think there'd be a runoff.
It may be a winning.
Is that weird to say? I don't know.
Speaking of the runoff, there is going to be a runoff. What is, can you tell us a little bit about his strategy coming out of the gate tonight? Looking at the data, it definitely is going to be a runoff. What do you do now? How do you get him over the line?
Well, first of all, we're thrilled. We're thrilled that he's in the position that he's in. We are not surprised that it's going to need a runoff. We had 4 people running. Four smart, capable, caring people in the race. And so I don't think that that's any surprise that there is going to be a runoff. We're thrilled that he is way out front currently to show that even with whatever's left, that he's out in front and that most people have been able to connect with him. And I think he's just going to stick on, keeping taxes where they are, improving city basic services, and bringing higher paying jobs to Denton. And I think, those are the things that he's concentrating on. That's what he has the background in doing, helping entrepreneurs, helping small and large businesses go to the next level in what they're doing. I think he's a perfect person to assist Denton to bring in what we want to bring in so that we can provide even better services and provide more for our citizens.
So Jody was a guest earlier, about an hour or so ago. She's currently has 814 votes, but a little over 11%. Yeah. She said that she would endorse Fuzzy in the runoff.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of interesting from what I understand, and I haven't run myself, but of course my father ran several times for city council and then mayor.
You're certainly engaged, Jill. You don't have to be a candidate. In fact, I advise you against being a candidate.
You heard it here. If I say no,
it is hard. But continue. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, Jody has been someone that has said all the time, she's a bit more of an introvert, and she's very kind of open about that. And knowing that it's difficult to run a campaign if that's your personality type, but yet she wanted to make sure to get certain issues heard. And I think that she's really accomplished that. And the whole time, from what I'm understanding from behind the scenes, is that she and Aaron have just, their relationship has grown and their friendship has grown, which I think happens when you sit next to the person you're running against and you agree on some things as well as disagree on some things, but you've got things in common, or else you wouldn't be the type of person that's up there running. Right. You've got similar type of personalities, type A personalities, people that care and have the energy to do this. And so, I from what I understand, that's something that they've enjoyed talking about the issues. They've enjoyed finding where they agree and disagree. And I think that both of them kind of came together on the big picture and what they thought was most important. And so I'm glad that she said that. I don't think it's a surprise that she has said that she would like the people that did come out and vote for her to vote for Fuzzy in a runoff.
Do you see a way that Fuzzy's campaign could use her skills or her endorsement? Like maybe I'm not sure. I mean, I don't want you to give away you probably don't want to give away your strategy. Your lawyers, you kind of keep your cards close to your chest. But has there been any discussion about how to kind of utilize her sway moving forward?
Well, so Aaron and I have discussed it briefly, and like I said, what I knew more about versus kind of on the fly today is just the background of finding common ground. But I think that, it's obvious that Aaron he's got the math down. He's got the spreadsheets. He understands the variables in the spreadsheets and how to read the profit loss, how to read the balance sheets, and where to raise a red flag. I think Jody, she comes from a social work background, and you need all of these things for a city to work. And I think that we are a very compassionate city, but we're also a fiscally in a fiscally tough position with the fast growth and the amount of spending and planning we need to do now for what the growth that we know that's coming. So I think that connecting with her voters and people that are concerned about the issues she's concerned about, and the information that is something that Aaron shares, and he has. I mean, he's shown that through the past few years and what he spends his time doing. I think that will be really helpful to maybe help him for people to see the well-roundedness, because I think it's easy to just look at the facts and look at the bullet points without really maybe getting to know Aaron and the caring person he is, because, he wouldn't be my friend if he didn't have a big heart, and he does. But I think he can also make tough calls when it comes to, 2 + 2 = 4. So, I mean, obviously I thought he was the perfect candidate, or else I wouldn't have supported him and been his campaign manager. But I can only say I'm pleased. I'm not surprised, but I'm pleased that Jody would throw her support behind him. And again, I mean, I do have a ton of respect for everyone that runs for office and that cares so much about our community. It's a big deal, and it's tough. And so I'm so pleased that Aaron Newquist has run the positive campaign that he has, and that not only is he a likable person, I think he's like us, and that he just likes most people. And so I think that the more that people get to meet him personally, and I think this will give him that opportunity to meet more people one-on-one, they'll see that caring side of him as well as the business side. So I'm excited.
Just more time to get to know Fuzzy is what you're saying.
Absolutely, and I think that will only serve us. And like I said, he's already way out front in where we are today. And with the third place person saying, hey, by the way, my people, this is where I would point to. We're very excited about the runoff. And again, the opportunity, and I think it's only going to behoove everyone to get to know these people better, so that on the other end, when one of them is on council, hopefully Fuzzy, more people know him and feel like they can talk to him and know how to communicate with him and feel like they're being heard, and vice versa, because I think communication is so important, and perception is, if you ever were a high school debater, reality. And so the more people that he gets to meet, and this is a great excuse to do that, I think the better off our whole community will be. So we are so grateful for the support we've had, and are looking forward to the next few weeks. And I don't know if you know, I've been under the weather, so I feel like I haven't really been a part of this campaign. I'm like my second round of antibiotics and steroids.
Oh, you're doing great.
I've been cranky. I'll be honest. He can tell you, I get cranky when I'm sick.
So
I'm excited to re-engage.
In the last election cycle, we had Don Duff, Jason Cole, and Paul Meltzer running for District 3, and that ended up in a runoff, right? And Cole threw his support behind Duff, and that threw the race for Duff, and it was just a handful of votes. It was 50, maybe 50 votes or so. That race was a lot closer than what we're seeing this race as. So I don't want to make a prediction, but if history is an indicator of the future, it's
not a bad place to start out.
For Fuzzy's campaign,
Well, it sounds like you're pretty confident in getting over the finish line in 6 weeks with a runoff election.
I mean, of course, you don't want to ever count your chickens before they hatch or your cupcakes before they're eaten.
I love cupcakes.
I love cupcakes.
Are there cupcakes out there, Kevin?
No, I had a Bensini earlier today, and so it's still on my mind. I'm still on that sugar high.
Worst party ever.
Worst party ever, really. You have not been to many parties, my friend. You need to get out more. If this is the worst party you've ever had.
Well, these two losers invited me to a party, and I'm like, well, I'm not doing anything else, so.
Okay, but they're not losers. Neither are you. Bunch of cool people. But no, I think one thing that Aaron has is he's inspiring and he has the energy. He and Jesse, his wife, oh my gosh, the two of them together, they just inspire me to
Facebook videos
work out and, eat better and take vitamins and, go to city council meetings, things like this. So, yeah, I'm very excited and, again, just very appreciative for the citizens that have taken the time to learn about the candidates and come out and vote.
So awesome. Are y'all going to do another podcast for the for the primaries?
I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll have to kind of look and see what
Glenn and I have talked about is that each candidate on any kind of runoff, excuse me.
Jill is talking. Shut up.
Thank you.
Please, Jill, continue.
In each runoff, each candidate in the runoff gets to appoint someone to represent them. And we've talked about different things. We talked about arm wrestling. We've talked about shivs. Like you have to make it there, then use it. Yeah. So it's not, you're creating a product.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you also get to use it and try to cut each other.
A little bit like the Hunger Games. Is this kind of what we've got?
So
we do have
just know I'm Jennifer Lawrence in that scenario. Okay.
Of course.
But I think something like that has to happen, and it's going to be very visual.
I feel like
physical.
local politics is kind of moving in that direction anyway, with the amount of yelling on Facebook. So perhaps this is just the natural evolution.
Well, being an attorney, and that's what I say to people. Whenever I hear lawyer jokes, things like that, I say, you know what? We use our words, okay? We use our words so that we don't use guns and knives and shivs and Chinese throwing stars and things like that. And so
arm wrestling I can get behind, though. I'm a massage therapist, so I will probably take you.
Okay, we got to figure that out. Okay, that's going to be off screen.
All right, since we are completely off rails now, thank you.
And are you surprised?
Thank you. No, I'm not.
Oh, Glenn, this is your show. Do you have something you'd like to say?
I have nothing
What
to
do you
add
think
to
about the
any of
runoff,
this.
Mr. Farris?
What's my, what?
What do you think about the runoff?
Yeah.
First of all, are you surprised
around here.
there's a runoff?
No,
and what's your greatest fear?
No, I have no greatest fear. I am fearless. No, but we definitely knew that there was going to be
fake news.
Not definitely, but there was the highest possibility of a runoff was this race.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. It was the most competitive. It had the most people. And it was highly likely that someone was not going to get 50% plus one on this
With 4
one.
people in a race, it's almost,
yeah, and
it's almost impossible.
Between Bud and Jody and Deb and Fuzzy, everyone showed up to just about everything they could. Mm-hmm. You didn't have anyone, like in the other race, the place 6, we had Brian who showed up. He showed up once. And
we need to make a real Denton Where's Waldo book, but it's Where's Brian. I haven't even met him.
I mean, if we're talking about, if you want to talk about like really interesting data coming out of tonight right now, Brian has gotten 410 votes.
That's what I would hope to get that if I ran.
410 votes.
Okay, so I have this thing, you know Jill is sick when, and one of them is when I don't make it to any of the
candidate forums?
Yes, because I'm usually at all of them because I'm interested or
engaged
doing them. But so Chris went. So did you have a sense of what was going to happen? Are you surprised by the outcome?
I didn't.
After being there in person and attending versus me at home in bed. Throwing things at the
I don't feel like
TV.
When I attend those things, like I walk away with any sense of how it's going to go. I mean, I've got my own reaction, but it's not like national news where there are polling orgs, like putting out data and you can catch up on that. Like there's a lot more mystery, it seems, in local politics. So I really didn't.
Which one did you go to? Which one did you go to?
The forum?
Yeah.
To that one?
Which one?
We didn't do it.
And then, we didn't do it for him.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, awesome. And both of y'all, thank you so much for coming on and playing with us tonight.
It has been our pleasure.
Yeah, we appreciate y'all. Appreciate what you do.
And I hope you've learned as much as we have attempted to impress upon you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
It's good to see you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's so good to see y'all.
Thanks for stopping by.
Well, the rotating cast of people are coming in. We're continuing to rotate people in as we look at the data that's coming in. We have an update on numbers. We've got 87% reporting.
That's a lot. I mean,
Fuzzy's
I feel like it's about
down to
time to call this.
45.9%, and Deb's at 38.41%, which I think is interesting. Deb is definitely gaining on Fuzzy. A day of voting.
I did text Deb too to see if she'd like to call in. I know she's her watch party's up at the Gary's on the other side of town. I did text her to see if she wanted to call in, but she's just probably busy talking with her supporters. But it would be good to get her perspective. So Deb, if you're hearing this, we've had Fuzzy on, and we just had his campaign manager on. So if you're hearing this, we'd love for you to call in and just dial me up, girl, and we'll put you on speakerphone. So hi, Alyssa.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good. How are you, Amber?
Alyssa is a much more attractive stand-in to our data boys that are in here.
They're pretty handsome bunch.
Too.
Totally no, definitely not.
And I think you're going to give us some analysis that's been crunching in the war room right behind us.
Yes.
What do you have for us?
I would like to definitely say that the guys who are in there with all of their computers, we've been discussing numbers for quite some time, and it's been a ton of fun. But let's take a look at a little bit of analysis. Do y'all mind starting with the Denton School Board? Mm-hmm. Cool. So let's look at DISD 1, Burns and Fritcher are the closest to. Of course, she's the incumbent, and she's taken it by quite a lot. But it was really interesting because he took a large part of Southridge and Robeson.
And who was this? This is
Burns and Fritcher. And Barbara Burns was the incumbent, but Fritcher took quite a bit. And then kind of an odd person took a small portion of Lantana, which I thought was really odd because of the voice out there. And then for the Denton ISD 2, they are Smith and Shuck, and they continue to get closer and closer. So while Smith is still in the lead by about 9 points right now, they are a shrinking margin. And what was really shocking was how much Shuck took Robeson Ranch, because Janetta Smith is a retired teacher in Denton, and Shuck took Robeson Ranch with 492 votes.
You mean in early voting?
No,
currently,
reporting.
Yeah, currently with 89% reporting, he's at 492.
For just Robeson Ranch. Mm-hmm. And he's still got a much larger percentage than that. But Smith only took 148 votes out there. And then he also took in a lot on the 380 corridor, which, of course, I really wasn't surprised by because he is from that area. They recently moved here, and he was a mayor out there in Providence Village.
Mayor of Providence.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And his wife has been on PTA at Calhoun Middle School for the last several years as well. And so they have quite a bit of influence out there as well as in here on the inner city of Denton as well. The bond, of course, passed by quite a large margin, which I thought was awesome. It won mostly everywhere, which was impressive. There was no place where it took an outstanding loss or a big hit. And then, are you ready for the council places?
Yeah, bring it.
This is the real part, right? So, the super fun part.
It's updating. Hold on. It's updating. Now
So my numbers were 87%.
Now it's at 89%.
Now we're at 89.
Mm-hmm.
What do we have here?
What's that? Yeah, you want to see? My favorite races. It just, it updated to 89% now.
Wow.
So it looks like Fuzzy's kind of still holding steady around 45, 46%. Deb's gaining some votes there. She's now at 38.5%. So really, it's basically going to be a run-on. It's almost impossible for him to get, 11 million votes at this point. That's my data. He needs 11 million.
That's your math.
Votes.
That's great.
A lot of votes. Can you update this?
Yeah, guys, we're getting actually reports from the data guys, and this is actually important for folks who are paying attention. It seems like one of the big precincts we're still waiting on is 4003 for Election Day votes.
Okay.
And that's big. Oh. We have someone back there who is actually out there at the vintage site.
That is huge.
Checking in. And he said there was a pretty high turnout today. I don't have
Really?
exact numbers.
Wow.
So we know that's a big voting
So
precinct.
we don't have 4,003 reporting day of yet.
Day of.
That's massive.
So as we're looking at this, let me look at what our percentages
massive.
are right now. We're still at 87%. So we're gonna keep our eye on that because depending on what that becomes for some of these races, that
Dude,
could,
it's like 9:30.
Right.
What's taking you so long? The polls closed for
well,
an hour
you said
ago.
it takes 30 minutes to drive from
It
there.
does.
So,
It literally does.
They've
It's
got
like
to turn it over here to
forever.
downtown.
I
Well,
know.
that's actually funny because you say now it's 9:30, but I asked Hugh Coleman how long he thought that it would take to verify all of the votes, and he said it'll be past 9:30 tonight.
Oh my God.
Because of the new ballot system, the paper ballot,
They have to
each
count those
one
paper
has to
ballots.
be.
I love those paper ballots.
Do you?
I do
I
not.
do, because you can, if there's any question about the numbers or if there's technology,
Yeah, you can
we all
count it.
love technology until it doesn't work, right?
No, there's
you got
no
a
question.
question
I
about
totally
it?
disagree.
No, then you have a paper ballot to
No,
back
you don't.
that up.
My
I
paper
love it.
ballot goes into a machine.
And they have
I don't
it.
know whether or not I filled it out properly. It doesn't tell me whether I
Right.
did or not. I was giving a ballpoint pen today to fill out this rectangle.
Oh, that's funny. I picked up a lead pencil from my spot, but I had to grab
And
the
I put
one
it in. I
next
don't
to
know
me
if
because
I
mine was
voted correctly.
broken.
So yes, there exists a ballot, but I don't know that my vote was counted. At least with electronic, it would record. It would report back to you before after you submit. I'm done. It would say you voted for this, this, this. Is that correct? Yes. Submit. So there, I don't. We're in 2018.
And then you push the button, and then what happens to your ballot? That's what I'm saying. Because it's on paper.
The idea that a paper ballot is a step forward is completely backwards.
I love it.
It's completely backwards
Well, I
because
love
you're
it.
basically saying like never before has a ballot box been stuffed with paper ballots. Look at LBJ in the Valley I can't remember the year, but like
she's
I don't know what the before my time.
out of a jar.
No.
Paper ballots.
we absolutely have stuffed ballot boxes with paper ballots. I think I think it opens up more of a risk to stuffing ballot boxes.
No, not at all.
Absolutely.
I think that you actually run the risk of people not correctly filling out their ballot forms and not fully circling or
How
doing
can
something.
you not full? I mean,
Amber, you say that, but how many students do I have every year?
Click, click, click,
Look
click.
at the STAR test. It is a state mandated test, and yet it often misreads the bubble sheets. What a kid has bubbled is not
I just
clear.
got handed something.
What we got? What we got?
Okay, breaking news.
Breaking news: 4003 has not reported today's numbers.
Whoa.
Well, it's not breaking
Do
news.
we know how
Patrick.
many?
It's actually not breaking
We
news.
said that 5 minutes ago, Patrick.
Come in here.
Patrick, fill this out again and send it to me.
Patrick,
How
come in
many?
here.
And bring me wine.
He
We
won't
already knew
come on.
that.
He doesn't want to.
So if you were just tuning in, or you just snorted, if you're just tuning in, or you just got to us, or have just flipped over to our
Call you.
Facebook,
Jill wants us to call her.
we will call you. But we have got to let you know that we are waiting for a very huge block of
It's a
votes to
big
come
deal.
in that could switch.
It is a big deal.
It could switch the course of the election. We could be. We could have Fuzzy pull out of tonight with no runoff. If you look at here's the thing
that's
though.
unlikely.
No. He came in with 73% of the vote in early voting in that precinct, a precinct that we've seen zero from today. If there are the votes out
massive.
there, that is big. That's big.
Yeah.
Is it big enough to overtake Deb? I don't know. That's for people with calculators to tell me.
So speaking of Deb, if you look at where Deb won, I mean, she basically won, if you're looking at a map of Denton, from UNT up towards Avondale, Northeast Denton, in a solid line through that map. But Fuzzy really won on the outskirts beyond that. So he's taking a lot more of the north and the south, but not that inner stripe of Denton where she's really been working really hard, you can tell. And what we also found really interesting is that Fuzzy underperformed Dalton from Dalton's last race, but the way that he underperformed him was in absentee ballots and absentee voting. And so there's some disparity there that we look at, and why did he not pull those in? if Dalton did.
So I've been talking with some of the candidates online, and no one is wanting to call in until 100% of the precincts are reporting. Everyone seems to kind of be on edge right now and on the edge of their seat, waiting for this final block out of 4,003 at least. I think if that lands and the numbers don't change and we're still the same, then we get closer to being able to call the race, especially for Paul Meltzer in place 6. And we should be able to tell in place 5 if there's going to be a runoff or not. I mean, that's kind of what everyone's waiting for. We haven't seen anything turn yet. We've seen it go from 86% of the precincts coming into 87%. Not much of a change. But 4,003 is going to be big. And 4,003, I don't know if you were sitting here, Kevin, but Fuzzy took home 73% of the vote in that precinct in early voting. So there's a big block of votes out for him in that precinct that could change the course of tonight. So,
but in the course of election day voting, you saw the gap close a little bit. I mean,
sure,
we were looking at closer to 47, 48% when we were looking at just early voting. So at least in the rest of the city. Now it depends on turnout. Number one, because we know Robeson historically is an early voting precinct. Now they have a new voting area out there for election day, so that changes things a little bit. So it's a bit of a wild card as to what this means coming in.
But it's a wild card enough that we've got candidates that aren't comfortable calling in and talking.
I would
with
say,
us.
Paul Meltzer, if that's you, I
Wait, hold on now. Paul's texting me. I just jumped in. What happened?
I wouldn't worry about it.
Paul shouldn't be where.
His worst case scenario is he gets in a runoff. But
I'm trying to build suspense here.
Frank Dunaway.
Sorry, Deb and Fuzzy are likely going to be in a runoff, but. Basically decided.
So while we wait and more drinks have been poured.
I brought more wine. I brought you wine, Glenn.
Again, we said from the beginning of this conversation tonight, we are inviting Denton to our bar top conversation that we would normally be having on a night like tonight.
Yes.
We're doing it in front of a live audience. But and we're doing it right here in downtown Denton. So you might see people walking by and they're heckling us and they're holding up signs saying,
then we invite them on the show.
I love Amber.
No one has a sign that says that.
I think I saw one. I think somebody just drew it on their chest. It's not like that. But a lot of fans downtown.
Gave a little shimmy shake.
I guess I want to return to this because it's come up a couple times tonight, Amber, and I think it's an interesting conversation. And you heard, I forget what phrase he used. Commissioner Coleman used the term crazies.
And then it was
so we're in a state of politics here where you would certainly say at the national level there's crazies involved there. At the local level, we've seen crazies. I mean, I can point to certain people. I mean, I think of a guy named Bob Clifton who was a part of politics at the early stages of my career and even before that. From a political perspective, he was unhinged. And that's normal. You have that sort of thing. So is your contention that there's no one that you would put in that sort of category, that there's no one that promotes falsehoods for the sake of their own political agenda, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally?
So I guess my general philosophy of that is that I just don't think it's fair to write anyone off completely. I mean, I may disagree vehemently with people. I may dislike people based on the way they've treated me or my family or the things that they've said about us online. But I don't think it's fair to just write off people as saying that they're crazies or all people who believe this therefore must, adhere to this. Like I just don't think that's fair. And which is exactly why it's a huge the primary reason why I invited Attorney General Paxton to my home for dinner. Like, we may disagree on the fundamentals of what it means to be transgender or how that relates with the rights that a person should be giving, but I don't think that it would be fair for me to write him off any more than I would want him to write me off.
Okay. Right? Yeah, I think the definition is definitely different because I don't think we can put Ken Paxton in the same bucket that I think when we're trying to sideline someone for being crazy, it's people that have zero There are no consequences to them even telling the truth. There's no consequence for them like selling just complete outright lies about people. I think that's kind of the person that in my head needs to be sidelined. Yeah, I think there's a certain level of discourse that has to come from a certain level of respect. Ken Paxton, at least, will talk to you about an issue, right? I mean, you disagree with him, but you come to the table and talk with him about it.
Yeah, but what my point is, I think when we write off people that we disagree with as crazies.
Right, but that's not what I'm doing. That's not what we're doing.
I think it shuts down the conversation.
But that's not what we're doing. We're shutting down people who don't have like a moral equivalence for even the truth. What is the truth here? And I think that's the type of person that you can, wouldn't you agree, Kevin, if you can't trust something that's coming out of someone's mouth, how can you have a conversation with them about what the truth is about an issue, right?
Well, so let's take an issue in Denton, right? And again, maybe these are issue-driven and people are so passionate about their perspective of the issue that they're more susceptible to what we know in national politics is fake news. We know that that's happened a lot during the Trump candidacy, that there's still people who believe that there's nothing to see here about anything relating to Donald Trump never had any, whatever, right? And we would say those people that are, for whatever reason, are not completely hinged to reality as it relates to what's going on in the world. So locally, we've seen that, say in the fight over renewable Denton plan or these gas plants issues. I mean, there's still a large portion of people in town that believe that there's a group of politicians that they still believe today were bought off by the oil and gas industry. They perpetuate this, still put this out on places like Denton Matters, that there is corruption going on, laws were being broken, and all these sorts of things that people continue to perpetuate. It's usually people speak that, and then a lot of followers believe that. Is that just a result of being passionate about the issue, and then it's okay that they have really unhinged views about the state of reality on some of these issues?
Like at what point
can you say that's not the truth? Or you're not interested in the truth?
Yeah. Or just say that person can be ignored because they don't have a basis of reality.
But this is my point, though, is that when you start writing people off as having hair on fire and being crazies, it automatically shuts down the conversation. And then, as you said, Glenn, do we just start ignoring them? No, we don't. We enter into a conversation with them and not say, you're crazy when your hair's on fire and, you're a conspiracy theorist, but tell me your legitimate concerns. And we can engage in a conversation at that point. That gives me an opportunity to educate you on why I disagree. And that gives them an opportunity to hear, I can hear their point of view. They can hear my point of view. And that's what I think has really gone wrong with America and with Denton politics is we just start writing people off because I don't agree with you. What you're saying is not, quote unquote, hinged in reality. Can we just sit down and talk with each other? And I want to hear why you believe the school bond issue was wrong. I completely disagree with you, but tell me your concerns and how can we move forward.
Again, and let's not confuse this with people with differing political viewpoints, because I think that's valid, and there's a ton of people who all of us can disagree with on a variety of issues in the town, and can even be really passionate and get angry at one another or whatever, but at the end of the day can still sit down and have those conversations, precisely because you're coming at it from a starting point of either of us can be wrong on this, and we want to kind of understand the other's perspective. But when you're saying writing people off, a lot of times these things are, and I've used the term when I was even on council, and I believe it. I mean, there's a sense in which people delve and peddle in conspiracy theories. And that happens on all levels of government.
Sure, yeah.
And at some point, you've got to say, do we, as a governing body, start appointing those people to boards and commissions, which we've started to do, or do we say perhaps that's not a healthy place to have people with that sort of perspective until they come around to realizing that? Does that make sense?
But you also just touched on a secondary problem here, is that the people who are involved in Denton politics, in Denton political life, are often people who probably don't always belong on boards and commissions, because we can't get a lot of people involved. We somehow seemingly can still not get a majority of Denton townspeople involved in local politics.
We're looking at the numbers tonight.
I mean, it's so sad.
People have voted.
We have 130,000 people.
Yeah.
And we had a massive school bond election and 2 school board places open. And that's a big deal because those don't come open that often with challengers. And this is that's a prime spot to have somebody come in and do a lot of damage. And so
when you have low voter turnout.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and not only that, but because of low voter turnout, I mean, so if you've got this low for just voter turnout, and that requires all of 5 minutes of someone's time, drive to early voting, go in, walk out. It takes a full 5 minutes, if even that. And then we've got, paper.
Something's coming in.
Breaking news coming in.
No, that's all right. We're going to have some actually slides, and I'm going to about to put up.
Can Jesse talk to us? Jesse, do you want to talk to us?
Do you want to come and
I'll take a bathroom break. You can take my seat.
Take my seat.
Yeah. Jesse, hey.
But we've got to get people involved who are valid. That's what we do.
Okay, I'm about to put up a slide here.
Slides.
All right, we've got a couple
Hey, data nerd. We have Jesse Hamner.
Jesse Hamner.
One slide?
No,
He's one of the smartest people I know.
The one you watch right here.
Okay, here we go. I'm going to cast this. Jesse.
So
Jesse Hamner, Dr. Hamner.
Very boring.
You've been in the back in the war room, crunching numbers.
Yeah.
Where's the war room? Is it by the bathroom?
It's by the wine.
Pizza is. Where the pizza and the beer is.
So what do we have up here on the screen here?
All right, you had asked me to pull the total turnout from 2003 for the last 4 city elections. The problem being, of course, they got the precincts changed shape a little bit this year.
Okay.
So some of these are going to be a little bit distorted, but I think you can also see in 2014, Robeson just hadn't finished filling out yet. They just hadn't.
Well, 2015 was the year that Kathleen Wozni ran, so that would be that's the year they really kind of woke up.
Was Prop 1, last cycle.
And Donald Duff.
And Duff, right? So you can see the turnout's pretty strong when they've got someone running from 4003.
Okay.
And I think it's probably indicative that we'll see something on the order of 700 to 800 turnout from Robeson. We've already seen about 750 from early and absentee.
Early voting, already 750
so,
coming in. And you're predicting about how many total you think would be?
I'm thinking I wouldn't see a whole lot more, like maybe again 300, maybe it gets up to about 1,000 or 1,100.
Okay.
I don't see a strong turnout, but that doesn't mean I'm right. Because things are real idiosyncratic, and there's not a giant motivator this year, but it's possible that some of the folks in Robeson have been receptive to one candidate or another, and so they have gotten some turnout that goes with that.
Okay, so let me kind of break this down for people who are watching right now. In precinct 4003, which is Robeson Range,
primarily,
we've got how many votes have been cast so far right now? Do we know the number of?
I'd have to go look that up. It's about 750 absentee and early.
Okay, yeah, we can find.
Yeah, I've got a map of that somewhere, but my laptop's not.
It's not in front of
my
you.
laptop's back there.
So in one scenario it could be if we get about 300 votes more out there on election day from 4003. We're looking at something that would be very hard to tilt fuzzy up above 50%.
I think with turnout at 7,300 and something beyond that, I don't think you'll see enough of a it wouldn't be 100%. It probably would be 2/3 at least for fuzzy, but I don't see it tipping the balance. But I think we're going to have a runoff.
Yeah, that's interesting. So Jesse, I know you're sitting down here to talk about 4003, and you like paying attention to these things. You like playing with maps, and we appreciate that because we all get to learn from you. Anything about when you're kind of looking at the data of this race versus previous races, anything else stick out to you about changes in numbers? I mean, in overall turnout in this particular election so far in terms of what we've seen, what are we seeing? Are we seeing something that's on par with other kind of even year elections?
It's a little higher than previous city level elections.
Okay.
I would have, if I had to guess on a total average, it would have been about 5,900 votes or 6,000 votes, somewhere in there for it. And so this is definitely above that.
Yeah.
I'm hesitant to say why, because there's no telling, especially since you don't know what the ground games have been for each candidate.
Right.
So, however, on the one hand, hey, the city's population is going up too. We're getting more people live in town, and I think there's greater political awareness in sort of the general just country as a whole. So I would say
we're at 100% now.
Are we?
Okay.
Wait, I think. Hold on.
No, hold on.
Hold on.
By the way, I have both Paul and Deb. I've been texting with them.
We are at
They said they'd be-
100% now, folks. Reporting breaking
call
news.
100%.
Aaron did not close that gap, so he is heading into a run-up with 100% reporting. Still sitting at 46% to 37 Deb's vote. In the district place 6 race, Paul Meltzer maintains his lead with 100% reporting, 54% to 39% with Frank Dudowitz. So he is pretty clear to win that, of course. Mr. Watts down a little bit from what he earlier had, but he's still sitting very nicely at 71% to Neil Durance's 29% heading into that. As we're looking at the Denton ISD races, it looks like Barbara Burns actually cleared 50%. But again, remember, in the Denton ISD races, they only need a majority. They don't actually need to get 50% to do a runoff. So Barbara Burns, incumbent, returns. Janetta Smith returns with 43%. She gets the majority of the votes. She will maintain her incumbency. And then, of course, we're looking at about a 75-25 split on the Denton ISD proposition in favor of the proposition. So we're at 100% now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it looks like...
Well, now I want to go check and see what happened in 4003.
Why don't you go out there and see what you can find and anything else? And Jesse, thanks for stopping by.
I'll be right back.
So I've got both Deb and Paul. I've been texting with them. They said they would call and they wanted to wait for 100%. So I don't know.
Tell them 100% is in.
I know, but they're probably celebrating or strategizing, depending with their supporters. So we'll see if we can get them to call in before the show wraps up. But I think this place 2 for Denton ISD. I was kind of watching that between Janetta Smith, David Shuck, and Angela Sid. She really, I will say, she really impressed me at the. Hey, I love Politically Denton. I don't know who you are, but we love you too. Hey.
It's our first song. Yeah, there we go.
But I watched her at the League of Women Voters Forum, and Angela, I thought she just slayed. I thought she was so on point, so articulate, and she had very little funding, not a whole lot of name recognition, but still got 15% of the vote. And I think that's. I think she should be real proud of herself for what a good job she did. So congratulations, Angela. And congratulations, Dr. Smith, on your win.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're looking at 100%. I think we're going to hear it. Paul just replied to me, too, that he's going to contact us after another phone call that he has. It's interesting now. Denton gets to go through this. All sides get to kind of reassemble, and we'll see how that takes shape for this runoff between Fuzzy and Deb.
And I mean, we had a runoff last year. What do we have to expect in the campaign of a runoff for a seat? I mean,
who ran off last year?
Didn't we have Duff? Wasn't
Duff
it
was Duff and Meltzer because Jason Cole jumped in. And then he threw his support behind Don Duff, and it was like those 50 or so votes that really kind of sealed the deal. And Paul.
Yeah, that's tough because, I mean, and we heard here that Jody Vickers-Nance indicate that she's throwing her support behind Aaron Fuzzy Newquist. And, I got to tell you guys, when you come out in support of a particular candidate in a election like this, and even though somebody says, oh, yeah, I'm supporting them, that doesn't mean those people are coming back again. A lot of people get engaged because they're personally invested in a particular candidate and they voted for that person, and that person, to be honest, ain't going to be there calling you up to go out and vote the next time, in most cases. So these become really difficult elections, and it becomes a real ground game. Who can kind of pull off the energy?
Well, and the runoff for city council usually happens in June. And, we've all lived in Denton long enough to know Denton's a different place in the summer than it is during the school year. Though the students may not turn out and vote in the numbers that we wish they would, it still is just, you have professors who are on vacation, we've got, teachers who are on vacation. People just leave town. It's friggin' hot in June.
We saw, and I'm pulled it up right now, we saw in 2017 in the runoff between Don Duff and Paul Meltzer, only 2,500 people came out and voted. Mm-hmm. So you saw a big, massive drop. And so the question is, who can get their folks out there to run. So, if you're Aaron, even though you got most of the votes this time, you got somebody throwing their support behind you.
It's like a whole new campaign.
It's a completely new strategy
Mm-hmm.
coming out here, how you maintain that momentum.
Bless their hearts, because campaigning is a beast. You start at the end of January when you file. There's not a whole lot of people that pay attention until kind of after we get back from spring break, but there's still plenty of stuff that you need to do to kind of, get your, get it going. And then you get back from spring break and it's like forum, meet and greet, forum, candidate debate. And, now they just get to kind of keep
But you really
doing
don't
it for the
have
next couple weeks.
You really don't have any forums or debates or really events so much.
It's a lot of fundraising, getting in front of people. I mean, it's not over. Like you can't coast at this point. Like if you're going to win it, you got to try twice as hard now, right? Because now you've got people who are going to be out of town. Now, Jody has thrown her support behind Fuzzy, so now Deb's got to work harder, for those votes too. And it's going to be you got to really work hard.
Mm-hmm.
Can't coast. No naps.
Yeah, so this is going to be interesting to watch. So, at this point, all the results are in. We're waiting on a couple of calls to hear from folks. Have we heard from Deb yet?
I'm just going to call her. I'm just going to call.
We're going to do a live.
I'm just going to call.
I like that.
All right, let's see if we can get her on the phone. There we go.
This does feel like one of those morning shows we're about to prank them.
You got it? I mean, I don't know what she's doing. Deb, pick up. Pick up, Deb.
This is like local access TV. It's like Wayne's World.
This is about as...
Hello?
Hey, Deb. Can you hear me?
Hey, hi, Amber. Yes. I just tried calling Glen Farris.
Yeah. Oh, great. Oh, no.
So I'm glad it's
Let her know she's on. She's
You're
live.
Hey, Deb, you're live. Is that okay?
What?
Are you cool? Because we have you live right now. Is this a good time, or do you want to?
I am absolutely okay.
Yes.
Hi, Amber. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Out there in the studio.
Hey, so what's the mood at your watch party right now?
Oh, well, everybody is loud and happy. In fact, I'm trying to find a quiet space. I'm over by the women's room at the Gary's or at the Italian restaurant. So I've got a little spot here. But yeah, the feeling is, everybody's excited for the runoff. Of course, you would have liked to win the first time around. But it looks like we're going to be able to do this. So it's exciting. I'm thrilled about, how the race, the first part of the race was won.
Are you
I'm looking forward to the next stage, yeah.
Are you surprised at all by the results so far? And kind of what's your game plan for the next couple of weeks?
Am I surprised by the results?
Yeah.
I anticipated that there would be a higher turnout than there was in 2016, and that came to pass. So I guess that didn't surprise me. I guess it's close to what I expected. Again, of course, I was hoping to just win straight away with over 50%. This makes sense. This is if I had to bet on an outcome, this is the outcome I would have bet on, and I think, and I bet most people would have bet on this outcome too for this race. Yeah, there were four in the race, and as a matter of fact, I was just writing to Jody Vickers-Yancey was the third person in the race. And then people were telling me, no, you got to call them first. Call them. But I was just writing to congratulate her on a race well won,
she was a guest earlier, and she was just almost. she was so. Almost emotional. Wouldn't you say about how well she did? And it's over, and she's proud of the race that she ran. She did say, I don't know if you'd heard the news, but she did say that she was going to be endorsing Fuzzy in the
really
in the runoff. Is this the first you've heard of that?
Wow. Now yes. Now that does surprise me. Because she ran on a platform and issues very similar to mine. So I'm surprised by that. People are not fully predictable, and that's a good thing. Life would be pretty boring if we were, right? So, that's a surprise. I'll be sure. Be sure to hear that. Yeah, we weren't actually here. It's so noisy over here. People tried to listen to this show, and it was hard to hear in this room. So we were mostly looking at the results and on laptops and just refreshing.
So Deb, thanks for calling in. This is Glenn.
I will watch it. Oh, hi Glenn.
Hey, how are you doing? I got a question.
Good.
How does your strategy from here change going into a runoff? What do you focus on now from here till the election runoff?
Well, right now, tomorrow is my day of rest. I need to have a day of rest.
Absolutely.
But obviously, we thought that it anticipated this happening. We're going to be focusing on, talking to voters who didn't vote and trying to, explain or didn't vote in the May election and trying to get them to vote in June and explain to them why that's important. And we're going to, even though, and again, I'm really surprised that Jody endorsed Fuzzy, since our platforms were so similar. But I will be looking at people who, talking to people who voted for her, and she got a wonderful turnout of votes, and I still see those as votes that would, if they're just voting on the issues, would come to me. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to keep on block walking and using all the help of volunteers that we can. That's probably something I'm forgetting. We're not going to, and I will say this: I hope that we get to have a debate. One thing I am looking forward to is, now that there will be just two of us, it'll be easier for voters to see, the differences between two candidates. Differences, and sure, overlap too, but also differences. So I hope that there will be at least one forum for the runoff, and I don't know, maybe you guys will be able to do one.
Maybe Politically Denton could do a forum.
Well, that's Deb. This is Kevin, and congratulations on staying alive tonight. And that was going to be my question: was whether or not you'd be open to a debate. And it sounds like you look forward to that.
I'm sorry, can you say that again? The reception's a little...
So, Kevin...
It's all right. She's already answered.
Yeah. Basically, Kevin was just kind of wondering if you'd be open to a debate, and it sounds like you would be. So, I guess stay tuned, everyone.
I would really love that. And I hope Fuzzy would too. So thank you, Kevin. Thanks. And Glenn and Amber, thank you. And I thought this was a great idea, by the way, and I'm sad that I couldn't hear it so well in here. Plus, I was talking to people, but I hope...
well, that's the great thing about podcasts, though, Deb. That's the great thing about podcasts, is you can listen to them later, so...
Exactly.
You're good.
And that's exactly what I plan to do, so thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thank you so much for calling in and taking part. We really appreciate your input tonight, so thank you. Thank you.
Okay, well...
Enjoy your day of rest tomorrow, Deb. I know you've got a lot of work ahead of you over the next couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Thanks for calling in, and enjoy your party. All right.
Okay. Thanks. Good night, guys.
Bye.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
And a lot to unpack there, but we do have a pending call here with Paul Meltzer. So, do you guys want to take my phone over to your microphone?
Yeah.
I'll put it on speaker. There we go.
We are super high tech here today. About as high tech as it gets.
Hello.
Hey, Paul.
How you doing, Paul?
Hey, how are you guys?
Let him know he's live.
Hey, Paul, you're live, so no swear words.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
That'll be really difficult for me.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty difficult for me. I'm not
He's
gonna
known
lie.
as a profane man on the phone, so.
So I'm standing outside on McKinney Street, outside of Bearded Monk, and you got some traffic in the foreground, not much, and some Cinco de Mayo in the background.
Hey.
So a little bit of Denton distillation here.
That's awesome. Fantastic.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah, congrats.
Thank you very much. Wow, not quite real yet, but goodness, it has been a very long road, and as Kevin, I'm sure you can relate. It's now we're just at the beginning. Right, we've got all these things to deliver on, and we've yet to embark on trying to contribute to helping keep getting better, not just bigger, and representing citizens' interests and not just special interests. And I have promised to make my first time on the dais at concluding items, very substantive. So, there's a lot to do.
Paul, what do you owe to your success tonight? What part of your campaign did you just execute the way you thought that it needed to be to get you the outcome that you saw tonight?
I have to be honest. We did a lot of mid-course correcting. So it wasn't like I could really say a crystal clear plan at the beginning that was executed and then resulted in a result.
Give us an example of that.
There's a very different rate.
What did you have an idea that you were going to do that you had to course correct on this campaign?
Not hearing you perfectly because of the traffic, but giving a rough idea what I think you asked me. The last run was quite an unusual moment. I now appreciate where we became the focus of political activity for the whole town. And I think in part because we did go into a runoff at a time when people were just getting very involved politically. Mm-hmm. And I thought that would carry over, but really different things happened from last year to this year. What happened was there were a whole lot more candidates in a whole lot of other races that actually attracted the professional and volunteer energies of a lot of other people. So it was just we couldn't use exactly the same set of tactics as before. But really, the bottom line is what we said connected to voters. I mean, ultimately, the thing that turned out to be true was that our message spoke to people. Right. That's it. It's really as simple as that. And then obviously you have to find efficient ways to reach people. And also, the thing that was sort of a carryover was me personally and other people, but definitely me personally, knocking on a whole lot of people's doors and listening. I got so many good ideas that became, parts of what I would talk about, just listening to the good common sense of, very bright, Denton residents. And, being funny how that works. If you're actually in touch with the people and you say things that are responsive to them, they like it and they want to support you. So, I think just being very inclusive of, the people you can meet by knocking on your neighbor's doors, seems to work.
So what does it feel right now to have, this is your second campaign. How does it feel just to come out on top right now?
The parts I heard were second campaign and how does it feel?
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Bit.
Yeah, that's it.
That.
Yeah.
How many victory laps have you done? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just said, we tried it the other way. Much more fun this way.
And no runoff
like the very last dog died, because we know what it's like to lose in a squeaker.
Yeah.
And I through the whole evening, that people were, in my mind, prematurely offering congratulations. I'm saying, let's enjoy this good feeling. It might all go to hell, by the end of the night, but let's just enjoy this good feeling. And so I'm still practiced in being tentative about it. But really, very oddly, it's very oddly focusing because now it gets real. We have to really deliver on people's hopes and legitimate expectations.
So that's my question.
As a single member of council, of course,
So what? So congratulations, and what? I guess what do you hope to accomplish in your first term here on city council? What are kind of your big ticket items that you want to get done?
Well, because of purely listening to the voters, actually, you could just replay my podcast with these guys because I made it all out there. But we have to give serious professional attention to a road repair plan that will bring us to a steady state so that we're, just like a big grown-up city that manages these things all the time every year and not just like this, terribly behind and catching up. We have to look at what the plan looks like to get us to a competent, steady state. That is one. I'm going to be extremely interested in hearing the status on the PEC 4 project that will allow us potentially to expand downtown and have density and vibrancy there without compromising established neighborhoods and with those great safe off-road biking and walking paths.
Mm-hmm.
Those are two right up at the top. I'm going to ask for at least an investigation into the costs and benefits of an air sensor network. There's three. How about we leave it at that for tonight?
There we go.
Great.
Well, it sounds like you're going to have your hands full for sure. So, but anyways, once again, congratulations, Paul. You definitely earned this one. You've earned it twice. And looking forward to working with you in the future. So congrats.
Yeah, congratulations, Paul.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right, get some rest, man. You had some hard work to do in a couple weeks. Oh, he hung up already. He's already not listening to his constituents. I'm just kidding. Yeah, no, congratulations. Well, I think, is that a wrap, man? You told me it was going to go till 9 and it's 10.
Yeah, it's 10. I'm really just waiting for, I think it would not be good of us to sign off unless we had Kevin in here.
Yeah, come on, Kevin.
To give us the
Kevin,
final
bring
word.
me wine and cheese.
I would text him, but I've got his phone. Do you want to go grab Kevin to bring him in here? Because I think we're pretty much done. Kevin's out there eating the pizza that I want to be eating right now. So let's get him in here, and we'll wrap this podcast up. We've been going at this since 6:30 p.m. It is now 10:06. This is the longest podcast we've ever done.
Fun.
Completely live. Amber, thank you so much for being on.
God, I hope I could keep up with your stupid jokes the whole last couple of hours.
Stupid jokes?
No,
What are you talking about?
Because radio listeners cannot hear me roll my eyes at your jokes.
We're hilarious.
I am.
I gotta say,
looks at everything, Glenn. No, thank you both very much.
Thanks.
For the invitation. This was
thanks for coming on.
No, this was
Yeah.
fun. This was fun. There was wine. There was cheese. There was like really good conversation. It was.
Yeah, it was a long night.
It was a
long night. Yeah,
It was a good
We
night.
took
Well,
one break.
Yeah. So.
you guys did a great job. So thank you.
Oh, that's
Good
right.
idea.
We actually had mini breaks kind of built in that we just
You
rolled
did? No one
right-
told me about the breaks.
Yeah, we rolled
Why didn't
right
you tell me
past
about
them.
And we gotta thank some folks because there's a lot of folks behind the scenes. We keep referring to this war room behind us, and we had a couple of guys who've been crunching numbers all night, looking at.
I want to be in
for
that
us.
room next year.
But and I say that to say we'll have a lot more to kind of report in the coming days that Politically Denton will be pushing out, and Glenn, myself, and Amber to just let you guys see some more analysis that they're starting to crunch. It takes some time to look at some of that.
Yeah.
But we also have, obviously, DentonRadio.com with
Yes.
Jake. who's actually helping run things down.
Jake, thank you so much.
And then his lovely
you did amazing.
New bride, Emily.
Emily, thank
who's
you.
actually right here.
Yeah, she's been here the whole time, and you
helping
never saw her.
us run the camera. But this is the whole goal of this is to engage more people in this conversation. Prior to tonight, if you wanted to find out what's going on, you go online and just kind of wait for results to come in. Or you're a part of like an election party, if you're kind of one of the chosen few. But let's face it, most people aren't going to one of those election parties or aren't invited. So we're trying to really just make this more interesting, more fun. And so thanks for everyone who stuck out with us tonight. This has been a great time.
Yeah, thank you so much for listening. Check us out on iTunes. Now, if you're looking for a reason to subscribe to us, now's the time. Get on iTunes. Subscribe to politicallydenton.com. We love talking in your ear about stuff. And thanks for joining us. And I think with that, we're done, right?
We're done.
We're done.
Sign off. Turn it off, Emily.
Turn it off.
Go to bed.
Well, thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the show. Be sure to check out DentonRadio.com for new Denton artists and where they're playing next. While you're surfing the internet, make sure you check out our friends Classic of Denton at ClassicofDenton.com.